don't anymore.
Exactly. He's in love.
That's right, they'll walk in at 6:25 and go,
Whoops.
Welcome, everyone. It is now 5:30, and I'll call our work session to order. Our work sessions are very informal, but we'll go around the room because most of the first item is our legislative agenda, and we'll start with Representative Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor Cowitz. I'm State Representative Roz Peterson, representing 56B.
Okay,
Right. I'm Dan Hall, Senator for Burnsville, Savage, and a little bit of Lakeville.
okay.
Bill Coughlin, City Council.
Dan Gustafson, City Council.
Michelle Collins, City Clerk.
Elizabeth Couts, Mayor.
Kara Schultz, City Council.
Dan Keeley, City Council.
Heather Johnston, City Manager.
Okay, and we'll,
John Gessner, son this week.
Tina Hardy, City Staff.
Patricia Nauman, Executive Director of Metro Cities.
Yuri Carlson with the League of Minnesota Cities.
Craig Johnson, League of Minnesota Cities and Burnsville resident.
Kathy Cleveland, Ames Center Commission Chair. Julie Oshak, City Staff.
Skip Meadhouse, City staff.
Jenny Faulkner, Community Development Director for the city.
Steve Albert, Public Works Director for the city. BJ Johnman, Fire Chief for the city.
thank you and welcome, everyone. The first item on our agenda, we go directly to our agenda items, and this is a discussion on our city's 2018 legislative agenda and with our state legislators. Our city manager, Heather Johnston, is going to be walking us through the agenda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will go through some of these items you've seen before, so those I'll go through a little bit more quickly. But we have our legislative agenda divided into three parts. We have legislative priorities, which those are the ones where we're actively seeking legislation. The second is supporting position statements. So those are the positions that staff are authorized to go write letters of support or testify if requested. And then the final one is really just monitoring issues, and that's the items that we just want to keep an eye on, and if something comes up, we'll bring it back to the council for further direction. I want to start with just a big thank you. The first item, of course, is on closing the freeway landfill. And everyone here tonight has done a lot of work for us on this issue, including the passage and the extension of the TIF district. And so wanted to say thank you very much for that, as well as working with our partners at the PCA to try and move forward some additional legislation. And so I know that there were many times we talked by cell phone when you were running all over the place. And so just wanted to say thank you. And so with that, we continue to have that as our highest legislative priority, closing the freeway landfill properly, and that continues to be the case. Right now, we're kind of waiting for the PCA. They are working with the landowner to try and make some movement on that. So, the second two legislative priorities aren't new positions, but they're new in terms of the priority. And you've all met my great team behind me, and so they have been told that if they want to add something, they should jump up and sit next to me and add something. So you may see them coming up from time to time. The second item here is creating and implementing local partnerships. We actually this is a splitting out of two positions that we had before. This is really wanting to make sure that the state statute doesn't prohibit collaboration. In fact, we like provisions that encourage collaboration. One thing that the legislature passed initially when the sales tax was again waived for local governments, it wasn't for joint partnerships. Now I think that has now been fixed, and so we appreciate that. Another piece that we talked about is the creation of fire taxing districts. So that would allow different jurisdictions to come together and to provide fire and EMS services in partnership in a more efficient manner. Okay, the next, I'm looking around.
Yeah, I was just going to say, any questions with regards to that? Yes, Senator, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I did meet with the fire chief, BJ, and to me, it looks like a really good idea to do the districts. So we're going to be looking at this year. Do you have legislation you put together, or does the chief have legislation?
Senator Hall, we certainly can get some, and the chief is here to probably tell you the Minnesota Chiefs Association has some prepared. So, but I'm going to let him
Because this is something that we've been working on for a while, so I'm sure that the chief has already had some kind of legislation that you can take a look at and carry for us. Chief?
Senator Hall, thanks for the question. Yeah, we actually have House File 2120 and Senate File 1918. Were introduced last year and failed to get a hearing last year, but are still obviously in the hopper, given a 2-year session. So we're hopeful that those get a hearing this year. That was spearheaded by the Minnesota State Fire Chiefs Association last year. So
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Representative Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor Couts. And a lot of policy was pushed out to this coming legislative session, so that is really what our focus will be, and this seems like a really good idea, so.
That would be nice if you would carry it in the House, and then Senator, you would carry that in the Senate.
Be glad to.
Thank you so much. That would be very helpful.
The next position is a new position related to law enforcement portable recording systems data. We have kind of split this position in two, one related to data retention. This position is related to the audits that we're being asked to do. We're a little concerned because our first estimates that we got were anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000, and obviously that doesn't come with funding. We have begun reporting that audit data in our monitoring report, and so we already have that as public information. But we just ask that that cost be a consideration when asking for things such as external audits.
You know, it's like that mandates that are unfunded. It'll be nice if they'll be funded so that it doesn't come out of the property tax.
Yeah. So, Madam Mayor, I'd
Yeah.
say it's such a new technology. I wonder, what it's going to be in 5 years from now, 10 years from now, the same thing. The auditing and the changes in it kind of reminds me of the 5G coming out.
Yeah.
How that's going to affect the cities around the state.
Yeah. And it's been technology, and Chief Giesecke, you've been working on this for a long time, and if you can come and give some information on that, simply because, as you all know, we were early adopters and have been, we've had
Pioneers.
this technology for the last 7 years, so second in the country to have them, and so the chief has been working across the country on this technology and has also been testifying on it, and Chief?
Well, thanks. The point that I'd like to make is we have a system in place that works very well for us, and I think we can demonstrate that we're in compliance with the law actually fairly easily with the system we have. We can create the data to show when we collect it, how we use it, how we classify it, how we delete it, so that we're demonstrating we're in compliance and we're keeping track of the information we're collecting. So we have a good system on the back end that allows us to do that. So we're really asking that we don't find somebody to come in and charge us more than we need to demonstrate that we're doing what we need to do and have a system to demonstrate it. It should be a low-cost audit, really, is the takeaway.
Great.
Now, if you need any more information, the chief will have a lot of that information as you work through all of this. That would be really helpful for us.
Madam Mayor, the chief has been really easy to work with over the years. He comes to testify.
Yes.
He'll take my phone call, I think, just about any time.
Yeah.
Which is half the time I'm on the floor giving him a call because I want to know his perspective on something. So appreciate him and BJ and what they've done for us at the Capitol.
Well, thank you, and that goes both ways. We appreciate the things that you're doing for us also, so really, thank you. Yes, Representative Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor Couts, and I also want to echo that sentiment. Thank you for being a leader in this area, and we do look at you and for you for continued leadership as we work through these different changes as we're adapting to different technology needs, as well as being transparent with the public without being onerous to thus the city, which translates down to the taxpayers as well. So it's a balancing act, and if you have any specific definitions of what that may look like, I think that would be helpful
Okay.
for at least us as we move forward.
Madam Mayor, Representative Peterson, I should have mentioned too that you all should have 3 copies of one copy of the 3 priorities. We did informational sheets that give you some additional information as well. And so the chief worked on this, and so that should give you some.
Okay, that's some numbers here. Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And welcome, we have Representative Sandy Mason, who represents, so if you could just introduce yourself, and we're in Burnsville and Egan, you represent, so it's great. Thank you for coming.
Good evening. I'm Sandra Mason. I represent District 51A, which is most of western Egan and all of northern Burnsville.
Thank you. Senator?
Hi, I'm Senator Jim Carlson. Sorry to be late here. This is the first time I've ever come to a complete stop on 35E South.
Really?
Yeah.
It's amazing, yes.
Yeah.
And I represent the most of Egan, with the exception of one precinct, and the eastern part and northern part of Burnsville.
Okay. Thank you and welcome. Okay. Heather?
Madam Mayor, so that completes our top three legislative priorities. So I'm going to move now into supporting position statements. The first is a new position. This was actually in response to the small cell wireless legislation. The city continues to oppose statutory language that erodes local authority, that create mandates that add local costs or additional costs, and also infringes in our regulation of the right-of-way. So.
Councilmember
If
Key.
I may, I think because the representative senator just joined us, because item number 2 had a little bit of discussion, and I believe that there's probably some strong bipartisan support. Can we just touch on that for their benefit?
Yeah.
The creating and
Sure.
implementing local
Yeah,
partnerships.
I think that's a good idea because this has to do with the fire taxing district.
So, and you'll have the bill numbers too, that have been proposed that are on this sheet of paper as well. And so the creating and implementing local partnerships, this is really wanting to make sure that state statute doesn't infringe in our ability to collaborate with our neighbors. One specific example that we had generated some discussion is related to the fire taxing district and trying to allow for some authority that neighboring jurisdictions can provide fire and EMS services within one taxing district.
And Chief Youngman, I think we've been working with Egan on this whole concept, correct?
Madam Mayor, we did a shared service study actually with 4 fire departments 3 to 4 years ago, I want to say. And that was Savage, Burnsville, Egan, and then South Metro, which is West St. Paul, South St. Paul. And we continue those discussions for some long-term collaboration and trying to see what that looks like. But yeah, this would allow us to further that and give us some more opportunities.
And again, we're also leading as early adapters into this whole concept. So I hope, Senator Carlson and Representative Mason, that you would help carry this in the House and in the Senate. Senator Hall and Representative Peterson said that they would carry it, and so we'd like your support as well.
Chief, would you note those bills that you noted earlier?
House File 2120 and Senate File 1918. And again, basically it allows 2 or more local units of government to come together to create a fire taxing district to provide fire and EMS services. And just a little bit of context, there's a little under 780 fire departments in the state. And I don't think with the recruitment and retention and the demands placed on fire departments these days that that's sustainable into the future. So I think this gives us the opportunity to find partnerships to create sustainable operations.
And the third part has to, the creating the law enforcement portable recording system data. We want to make sure that these are not unfunded mandates.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think because those are our 3 most
Three.
important, we've sort of gone through, since I've been on this council, a cycle of, here's 35 things that we'd like you to try and do, and we've evolved into really focusing on 3 things that we really, really would like you to focus on and get done. And, the other ones are a little less urgent and important. And so I wanted to make sure you had the benefit coming in just a few minutes after those first 2 items were discussed to kind of get
Thank
a
you.
little bit of that discussion.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
on
Senator.
these supporting position statements, are those in priorities? Or are they just kind of, they're just listed, there's no priority to
I
them?
think we prioritized them, didn't we not?
Yeah, I think when you look at it, it's 1, 2, and 3. They're not in order of priority. If I'm, they're important to us, but not in order of priority.
Madam Mayor, Senator Hall, I mean, any of those are things that the council's authorized us to move forward. Some of those were things that were higher up, and so there were some of the, I would say that some of the first few were probably the higher priorities.
Okay.
But after, say, number after number 5 maybe, or,
Sure.
so it's just, but all of these are things that we support and that are willing to either write letters or come and testify if you need
Great.
support on those.
Thank
So.
you.
Okay. Senator Carlson?
Madam Mayor, thank you, Madam Mayor. I have one question on the taxing districts.
Yeah.
Being that we've gone through the street service taxing districts
Yes.
issue for the last couple of years, and there was a threat of constitutional challenge on it. Is this a property tax that even the nonprofits would be involved in?
I don't think so. Chief Jungmann, I don't think the nonprofits are part of this, but you can speak further to that, Chief and Heather.
Yeah, Madam Mayor and Senator, I don't believe the nonprofits would be involved in this. This would be a total government entity, similar to like a library district or the mosquito district, I think are a couple of good examples of local special use taxing districts, and it'd be set up very similar to that.
Okay.
And there is one fire taxing district in the state, Cloquet area fire taxing district, but that's the only, and that's done through special legislation. That's the only actually authorized fire taxing district in the state. And this is a very common practice west of here. When you get into Colorado, Washington, Oregon, a bunch of states west of us do this very successfully. So the premise is based on their legislation.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Keely?
And the ultimate desired outcome is consolidation of resources to gain
Yeah.
efficiencies, to be, which sort of happens because of mutual aid in a way, but there's
Right.
still a chief and some captains in every city, that sort of infrastructure that could be partnered together in a taxing district to allow the resources to go further. I mean, really, it's a good, I think Senator Hall and Representative mentioned, it's just a good idea, right? And I think BJ made the point, the current model just isn't sustainable with the trend in the interest in becoming a firefighter, becoming an EMS. The workforce is a major influence on this. And so the discussions are, I believe they originated as part of the HIPP discussions.
No,
way
it
back.
wasn't part of HIP.
The high-performing
Yeah.
partnerships.
Yeah.
Councilmember Keely, this was actually done through a state fire marshal's grant.
Yeah.
Is where we came up with this, yeah.
It just sounded a lot like some of the ideas that I remember City Manager Craig Ebling noted came out of that high-performing partnerships of how do we consolidate and get some better efficiency out of certain support. In other words, when you have a fire, do you really care whose name was on the door of the fire truck or the EMS truck? It's really you just want, immediate emergency help.
Yeah, it's about leveraging all of our resources. That's how we came about with the communications center and so
One center,
forth.
right,
All of
absolutely.
those initiatives. Councilmember Coughlin?
And I think if you could just really briefly point out the interest amongst the communities that you experienced during that grant event. Share with them. Because you
As far
said
as-
there were a lot of interest.
Yeah, Councilmember Coughlin, we involved the 4 fire departments, and there was a lot of interest in looking at what those options are. And ultimately, the study said that we've maximized our short-term collaborations with mutual aid and training together and kind of all the stuff we can do. And long-term, we need to look at consolidation. So this is kind of that next step. And those 4 departments, or our 4 departments, have very like-minded leadership and wanted to look seriously at that. And we're starting to see that more and more across the state, frankly. It's, like you said, out of the workforce and the demands, there's a lot of interest in that for a future model.
Yeah. And we do so much of that. We own the Able Building together, train at the Able Building, and this is, Apple Valley, Burnsville, Egan, Lakeville, ABL, yes.
Yeah, we've successfully had that partnership since 1984. So, I mean, it's not new for us to partner.
That's right, where we train together, and the building is in Burnsville that the fire departments all use.
So bottom line, it's a great idea. We'd like you to
Yeah.
get behind it. How's that?
You got it. Okay, very good. And then, of course, one of the things that we also expressed early is that thank you for all of your help, all 4 of you, with the freeway landfill closing. And we continue to work through all of that and want it to be done in a way that ensures the safe closure of the landfill. Okay? All right, now we move on to supporting.
Supporting position statements. So the first one is new, and that is in response to the small cell wireless. Thank you to our partners in the room who are at the legislature who have worked on this issue as well. This is, as I think I just mentioned, opposing statutory changes that interfere with our regulation of the right of way. The next position is regarding metropolitan governance. This used to be one of our priorities. It's now in a supporting position statement. Really, the council has indicated that they are in favor of a modification to the present governance model for the Met Council to provide for more local impact and input, specifically on a nominating committee, and to be able to have some additional input and comment officially on the nominees.
In staggered terms.
In staggered terms, did I think?
It's not in there,
I thought
but.
we took it
yeah.
out. I think we took it out because there wasn't consensus among council members on staggered terms. Number 3, residential care facilities. This was also a priority. Thank you to Senator Hall, who sponsored this, and I think Representative Mason was also on this bill for us, and Representative Christensen. We continue to believe that residential concentration of residential care facilities is an issue, not just for the neighbors, but also for the residents as well. We do recognize that these provide important services, and we do believe that they're appropriate to have in our community. It's just the concentration of them that causes us some concern.
Yes, Councilmember
I want to add on this particular item, we added a line requiring the state to notify the community when these homes are coming into neighborhoods. And we have a split council on this one. I feel that's a violation of fair housing, both federal and state. I'm also concerned that a protected class's privacy is being compromised by showing people where they all live. It could be a danger for them to be victimized, and I don't think it's a good practice for us to do.
The next item is massage therapy establishment. We do support the statewide professional licensure and regulation for massage therapy. This is about having similar standards. If the state is unable to do the enforcement, we certainly can continue to do that. It's just that having statewide standards would be helpful. The 5th priority is preserving the host community economic development grant program. Again, thank you. This program has been threatened a couple times, and so we appreciate all the work that folks have done to preserve that for us. We have done some pretty great things with their money, including working on some solutions to the bottleneck over at Cliff. We've done some things in the heart of the city, and so we are very happy to talk about the great things that we're doing, and really do appreciate your support of this program for economic development.
And if you realize that the 2 landfills in the metro area are in Dakota County, and one is Burnsville.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as we're taking garbage, let's make sure that we get some benefit out of that.
And Madam Mayor, to that point, I think we often get the question about why us? I mean, one of the things is we support sustainability, we support recycling. The PCA has put very aggressive goals in place, which we support, but as they have more recycling, we get less in terms of host fees. And so that means we have these landfills in our community much longer, and it makes it much harder for us to do economic development. And so you all know this, just for the public, that's the rationale behind this program, so. The next priority is property maintenance code enforcement. This is requesting that code enforcement officials are included in the definition of public employees under Minnesota Statute 609-2231. That would mean that an assault on a code enforcement officer would be a gross misdemeanor. Redevelopment and development, we continue to say as many tools as you can provide for us, we're happy to take and use for economic development. The next piece, we do have some specific examples in the legislative positions of economic development tools that we find particularly useful as well. The next item is local land use control. We oppose legislation that reduces or eliminates the city's authority in the areas of local zoning. We have talked about this at some length in the past. That also includes transportation planning in other areas. Daycare facilities and licensing. We do support the allowance for daycares as a home occupation. However, we would like that to be only when somebody actually lives in that home. Levy limits. We support the representative democracy principle that allows city councils to govern our levies, and we continue to oppose state-imposed levy limits. Transportation. We have a couple different pieces under here. We are very happy with the Orange Line funding, and thank you for your support of that. In terms of transit, we continue to support the independence of the opt-outs and MBTA. We think they do a great job and have an efficient operation, and like to continue to support that. The other piece is maintenance. I think some of you have heard about this on the right-of-way. We would like MnDOT to meet property maintenance standards adopted by cities on things like the medians and on their own property. We'd like that to be consistent.
Like Highway 13, do you not notice how awful it looks?
And we've heard you before on it.
That's right. And so we'll continue to say, do your work, or else if we're going to do it, you pay us to do it instead. Yeah, so thank you for carrying that.
You could just declare the center median as a wildflower sanctuary and just let it grow.
Yeah, except when you have sight lines and all of that you can't see.
Yes, it's kind of pushing that height of wheat when they're blossoming and they're getting very colorful, and you're wondering if it was meant to be
One
left
man's
that
weed
way.
is another man's flower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Madam Mayor, as long as we're on the transportation here, I wondered, I've had some constituents talk to me about noise wall. Have they come to you on 13 by Cub?
Yeah, I'm going to be meeting with them. You're talking about the Meadowwood
Yes.
group, and I know that they told me that they've talked with you. So the thing is, that's MnDOT, it's not ours. So that's going to be something that I think Mr. Albrecht is here, and he can also speak to that. You know, I would believe that if there's going to be a noise wall going up in that area, they're going to have to carry that cost. Mr. Albrecht?
They being who?
The Meadowwood people.
Okay. Well, we were in the discussion I've been having is hoping that we could do something collaborative with them, with the city, with us or county, that we could all put into that. I'm assuming, as I think about it, it was about a quarter mile from Cub to the businesses. And I just want to say, I feel for them. Most of them are seniors, and
I
living that close
understand.
to the freeway, it's
Yeah.
a pretty tough spot.
Yeah.
So, and I know you do too.
Yeah, and so that's something, but I'm going to have Mr. Albrecht speak to that because we've been having this discussion. They've talked to our staff about that. I'm going to be meeting with them as well. I remember the discussion when that development was put in place, and it was right there by 13.
Yeah.
And
Was it as busy then, Madam
Oh.
Mayor?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
but it gets busier and busier as more, but it was there. But I remember when Meadowwood was put in place, and it's because it was the first zero lot line development that we have in town. Mr. Albrecht?
I think just to add a couple things quickly. Number one, I think that was identified as a concern building that close. They made a choice for density. They have private streets. They did everything they could to pack units in there. And now here we are years later with a problem that was identified as an issue, wanting someone to fix it. And we sympathize. We do know that it's close, but it's the highway was there. The highway was loud before they were built. That's the first issue. From a sound wall standpoint, it doesn't qualify for MnDOT's program for a sound wall. We have other areas of town where we go down the path with Meadowwood who would be breaking down City Hall that are on 35E, 35W that would like to see sound walls also. So it isn't isolated for us. The other solution that's been kicked around is the jake braking signage, and that's somewhat problematic for the cities. In Burnsville, we have one traffic patrol officer. In order to put up that signage, you have to pass an ordinance that you will enforce jake braking, and that is a full-time operation. Then to have police dedicated to jake braking and sound noise monitoring isn't something that we as a city are equipped or funded to do. And so that's some of the issues with their concerns. Obviously, we understand with the two signals, they get the braking of the heavy trucks at both of those signals, and that's the air brakes and engine brakes are the things they complain about. So I'm not sure there's a good solution for the units in those areas other than some of the soundproofing things that are done in some of the airport zones for noise. But in the summertime, that certainly doesn't help their issues because they are very close to 13. So.
Yeah.
And the other is that I don't know if the state patrol would like to patrol it if there is jake braking, because it is a state highway.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It-
So the statute says that the city has to enforce that, or can you clarify exactly what that means?
The signage can be put up
Signage.
by cities, but the cities have to pass an ordinance that they will do the enforcement of the noise standard for jake breaking.
And that's
So,
in the statute, or is that in
That's in that,
rules?
that's the requirement that MinDOT and State Patrol have.
Okay.
That's my understanding. I don't know that that's a statute necessarily. It's a MinDOT policy, so.
Which means that we're going to have to add personnel. Yes.
Yeah.
Senator,
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've had some experience with the noise wall issues. There is, MinDOT does do a study.
Yep.
And supposedly, they were going to try to do it once every 2 years, and they do rank
Yep.
all of these locations.
Yep.
And I have a couple of places that, in Egan, where the people have objected to it, and I've actually gone out and done sound measurements. And I have a particular problem with their formula because it does use occupancy as one of the inputs to it.
yeah, the
So-
density,
Yeah, it's, and one of the high priority ones was on Highway 13 and Horizon Drive,
yeah,
which I went there, took sound measurements and actually talked to a resident, and they said, absolutely not. We do not want a sound wall here because we won't be able to see the western sunset.
true.
In other places, they
Yeah.
want to be sure to have a sound wall because they can't go outside, they can't use their decks and all of that. So it came back to MinDOT. There's an amount of money that they get
That's right.
to do
That's
this,
right.
and they go right down the priority
Yep.
list. And if you're not on that priority list, the city can participate.
That's
And there's
right.
different levels of participation,
Yep.
and I believe it's something like 50/50. And the MinDOT will bump that up in priority list. So there's a lot to do there, a lot to think about, and it
And it's
boils down to
expensive.
money.
Very
It's expensive for the city.
Yes.
Yeah. And Mayor
Yes.
Couts, if I'd add, the homeowners association is in the process of replacing their existing fence right now. So that's why it seemed like a timely discussion to see if there would be a way to do a partnership of some sort to maybe everybody
That would be
sort of
nice if
pitch
the
in.
state has money to put into that, because I can tell you that in the city of Burnsville, we're not going to be raising taxes for that. Councilmember Keely?
Well, I pulled it up on Google Maps and I drive by there quite a bit, and really, there's no natural buffer
No.
that was built in. There's not much of a berm.
Correct.
If it were me, the association should look at putting in a double row of tall evergreens that aren't going to lose their foliage. I mean, they do have a lot of trees. There's a few evergreens sprinkled, but that's not a good sound barrier. Though I don't think the fence is going to be much help, but
No.
if it were me, I think they need to invest in some natural,
Buffer.
like a double row of, even put a berm in and put a double row of
Pine
evergreens
trees.
that are going to be, absorbing that sound year round. Because
Yeah.
right now, this is a winter shot
Go ahead.
from Google Maps, and it's bare. I mean, all the leaves are gone, and most of them have no buffer. I mean, literally, they could run out their backyard and run right up to the highway.
If you notice on there, Councilman, the fence, I think, is
Yeah.
pretty much the line.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
it is.
they couldn't put the trees on probably, because they have to be the other side of the fence.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no room there.
And
on
that
this
is
side.
MnDOT right-of-way,
Yep.
correct, Steve?
That's correct.
And then again, we'll need to get permission
Here's the problem.
to do all of that. Heather?
There are also power lines there, so
Yeah.
that wouldn't be a
I
good
know.
place for.
Well, and to be
Oh,
honest,
that's
that's why a bunch of trees were there, but they took down,
Yeah.
MnDOT took down all the trees, which made them lose their buffer for the utility lines. And they were
Yeah.
curious if it, it's too late now, but on the other hand, it would have been better to maybe bury those lines and keep that foliage that would have protected them a little bit
Well,
more.
again, then that needs to be with the utility company to bury the lines, and that's a big cost to bury the lines. There are a lot of people around Burnsville who would like to see those utility lines, those electric lines buried, but again, when the cost comes up, then they say, well, no.
It does look like there's room along most of the property line within the backyards, and there are some evergreens there. They're just not very many, and they're not
No.
compacted. I mean, they're meant for
Yeah.
More, traditional landscaping as opposed to a sound barrier. The furthest west portion, that fence is pretty tight on their backyards. There is some trees along back there too, so they do have some room to put some things within their own property and still manage it. But that's certainly one approach that they have some control over. But
Yeah.
Okay.
Good luck on a
We'll try to
partnership.
work from the statewide, see what we can do there.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I'll continue on cable service providers. Very briefly, that no, we do not believe that any case has been made for statewide franchising and continue to oppose that. Support for local services, the next item. If there's an increasing level of, we appreciate and support the increased of training and support for that. There were several bills that would help with resource intensive. We don't support having requirements that are put upon us without actual funding for that training. It's very resource intensive, as you know. Alignment of responsibilities to agencies with expertise. There are some times where it's a little hard to figure out who at the state is in charge of certain things. There have been some conflicts. We've worked through them. But things like DNR and PCA and figuring out certain water bodies or a watershed district. And there's other pieces with Dolly and the State Fire Marshal's office. And so we just really like to have one agency in charge of their core missions. To the extent that is possible.
You're not the only one to bring up this subject, but more specifics is really helpful for us so that we can get some verbiage, et cetera, so we can be a little bit more effective than, yes, agree with you in concept, but until we know more details, that's what we need.
Okay. We can certainly get that to you as well. Good. So, because it can be in any number. You tell us which agency you're interested in, most interested in. Primary service area, the next item. As you know, Burnsville, like other cities, has multiple ambulance services that are authorized. We will continue to support that Burnsville be the primary service provider. Reimbursement for EMS, this is probably not new to you at all as well. We support legislation that would reimburse the city at a higher rate than currently provided for medical services. Broadband priorities, we support the state's broadband task force, and we like the fact that we want to be a leader in broadband. There have been grant programs, primarily those resources have gone to rural communities as opposed to the metro area. Number 18, fiscal disparities. We have, the State Department of Revenue did do a...
I see you shaking your head,
I don't even want to
Senator
hear
Hall.
about that anymore.
Okay, then you'll be...
well, it's 18th on the list.
Unfortunately, I do want to tell you that. The MLC is actually looking at this. As you know, the Department of Revenue did a study on this, and there were no recommendations. And so the MLC, this is a program that is of interest to the Municipal Legislative Commission, of which Burnsville is a member. And so we're trying to see if there are any tweaks we might recommend to you all. So more to come on that.
Senator?
Are we putting into that now, or are we getting out of that now?
Well, it depends on the year. I think
Yeah.
we get a little bit back.
Senator Hall, we have consistently been a contributor over
we're
the
a
years, and
contributor,
so we
but-
still are. Yep, we
Okay.
still are to the tune
We're
of about
always a
$3 million.
$3 million?
contributor.
Yeah.
Remember, because we have a very nicely balanced land use, and so we have a lot of commercial industrial,
Yep.
and that's where that goes. So we contribute into the fiscal disparities pool, and also, as you know, you take 33% of commercial industrial to fund education.
Yep.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
We'll keep you posted, Senator Hall.
Yeah.
The next item, local government aid. We continue to advocate for policies that more fairly address the disparities in property tax burdens, looking at a percentage of income. As you all know, the city of Burnsville did not receive any LGA in 2017, even under the new formula that helped with older housing stock. We are estimated right now to receive $6,318 in 2018. So.
Don't spend it all at once.
That's right, that's where I got, it's LGA that sometimes we get it. We're always a contributor to fiscal disparities,
Yep,
yes.
absolutely. That's correct. The next piece is eminent domain, or property rights takings. We think that the current statute provides a disincentive to that, to landowners to actually try and settle. And part of that is the fact that we have to pay for both sides' attorney's fees. The Metro Cities has a position, I think 3M, on this, and I think Patty is here as well, so she could help if you have specific questions. But we support that proposal. Effective delivery of local government services. This is wanting you not to tell us what you need us to do, but not how to do it. There was a provision in the sprinkler bill that talked about limiting any fire extinguishing device. We have had a great amount of success in getting grants for fire stops, especially in our multifamilies. And so that kind of got swept up in that. And so we, again, that's one example of something that didn't go through, fortunately, but it has been a tremendous tool for us that we like to continue to use. The last item there is a new item, and this talks about effective administration of local, state, and federal elections. There's really two pieces to this. The first piece is the cities are the only ones who are really required to count write-ins, all write-ins. So we would like something similar to what the feds and the counties have, where you have to request 7 days in advance if you're a write-in candidate to get those counted. And so Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, those types of things that come in, that actually takes a very long time to count. And so we would prefer that if they want those votes counted, that they come in themselves to have those votes counted. The second...
Apologies. How many people have requested that?
Oh, well, I mean, right now we have to count all of them.
Right, but it's normally like just a number. There were 10 write-ins.
If somebody is a write-in candidate that, if it's an actual person, they might come in 7 days in advance and say, I would want you to count my votes, and in which case we would do that. We think it's highly unlikely that Mickey Mouse, Satan, any other number of the folks that would get votes would come in and request that they be counted.
Captain Jack Sparrow, he's a perennial favorite.
I know, he's a good
Robin
one.
Hood, many others.
Jesus
So
Christ.
that's one piece. We would just like to have the same requirements that the other jurisdictions do. The
Senator
second,
Carlson?
oh, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Is that what you're asking for is to count and report, or is it to count? Because I think you already count them and you list them as write-ins, but there's no name, no reported name.
Madam Mayor, Senator Carlson, we would like to not count them unless it is requested that we count them. So if we have, so essentially that you have to actually be a person who comes in advance and says, I want you to count any votes for X person. So an actual Sam Smith, for example. So Sam Smith would have to come in 7 days before the election and say, please count my ballots. What this would do is the thousands of ballots that are not real people would not need to be counted, because we spend a lot of election staff time counting and recounting and validating. I mean, we have 17 precincts, and so we want to not count the votes that aren't real.
And we don't have to do that for federal, and we don't have to do that for state, but for local, we do.
Correct.
So what we want to do is to be
Treated like
the
federal and
same
state.
compliant
We don't have to.
as federal and state,
Okay.
and the county. I mean, it's only local elections where we have to count all of those non-person or anybody who hasn't come in and said, I want my votes counted. Yes.
City Clerk Collins could
Yeah,
maybe
I'm
give
gonna
us an idea of how many each election cycle there are.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Keeley. Yes, I think that at the last election, we had about 3,400 write-in votes that we counted for just mayor and council.
Yeah.
And there was also, for a school district, we have to
Yeah.
count those as well. So
Just the
it's
local.
the city and the school district that still have to count, or have to write down every single vote that is under the write-in. Whereas the county, state, and federal elections, they're required to submit something 7 days ahead of time saying that we want you to count our votes.
And it's a real person. I'm going to go to Sandy, and then I'll come to Kara, and then back to Senator Carlson. Yes.
Thank you, Madam
Representative
Mayor.
Mason.
Going back to that, and I don't remember the situation because it goes back a number of years, but I remember in an election where we were trying to get a write-in, And at the end, when we're getting the results, none of the write-ins were given to us anyways. So
This formalizes it.
But this was where it, I understand the Mickey Mouse stuff. I know that's really frustrating. But the thought is, again, we came close to the election. I can't remember the situation, but I know that a number of us were doing a write-in for a legitimate person. And I personally think it's important for people to be able to voice their conviction when there's a lot of controversy going on in a particular election.
Madam Mayor, Representative Mason, that may have been a different level than the city election. Do you recall which?
I honestly don't. This
Okay.
goes back.
Because if they did not make that request and it was for a state office or for a federal office, then you would not have gotten those write-ins.
Because it's
So,
a
if they
requirement
did not
for
make that
municipalities and for the school district. I'm going to go to Councilmember Schultz and then Senator Carlson.
Does this also cover judgeships?
They're on the side of the county.
County.
Yes, and the state and the federal government.
Okay. A concern I have is you theoretically have a situation where someone could win through write-in, but because they did not request their votes be counted, they're not. I'm a little uncomfortable with that.
Okay,
If
Michelle.
I might, Councilmember Schultz, the write-in votes are tallied.
Yeah.
It's just that we don't have to, if somebody, let's say, I have no certain feelings about the 7-day requirement or anything like that. If somebody wanted to be a write-in candidate in less than 7 days before the election, maybe there's some allowance for that somewhere, and I'm not sure how, but I do know that it's only the city and the school district elections that are required to account for every
Right.
write-in vote, no matter if it's blank.
Mhm.
We need to know that, if it has a cartoon character, or a lot of people go and write their own names on every single write-in on the ballot, and we have to count that for every single office.
See, I think if you're a serious candidate, you would want to say, I want my votes counted. So Sam Smith would say, 7 days before the election, I want my vote counted. Then that's done. And if you're a serious candidate and you want to make sure that your votes are counted. But right now, we count everything. And that's only municipalities and school districts, so only on the local level, and not counties, not state, not federal. So we're just saying, treat us the same way.
That I understand. I just have concerns over disenfranchisement.
Well, that's happening at the federal, state, and county level right now.
It is, but just because someone has a crappy practice doesn't mean you have to adopt their crappy practice.
Well,
This is really, we're trying to deal with the nuisance people, not the serious candidates.
No, and I get that. I completely get that. And I've also heard like the horrendous amount of time that staff has to go through on counting votes for entities that don't even exist in the real world. I completely understand that. But I always feel that we should err on making sure people are not disenfranchised rather than expediency. Even desperately needed expediency.
Okay. Senator Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm kind of struggling with the same kind of question here I think Ms. Collins answered it saying that they're tallied, so we know how many votes are not the major candidates. But we just will not write down each candidate that gets written in. Now, the only
Unless requested.
instance that
Unless
that might
requested.
cause me a little problem is if someone is running in an office where there's no opponent, no official opponent. And I think probably it's up to the person that is mounting a write-in campaign to come in and make their request known. So I'm just thinking out loud here that I don't think I have a problem with it. But I guess I am wondering, is the League of Minnesota Cities or any of those organizations, are they behind this? And what?
Mr. Carlson, we want to come to the table. Do you have a position?
It happens when you show up.
Madam Mayor, Senator Carlson, the second thing, I think the league has a position on the second piece of this, which is related to the supporting legislation that would extend the alternative absentee voting to equal the full day, 46-day period, but I don't know about the other piece.
Madam Mayor, members, we don't have a position on this issue, and I want to explore it with Ann Lindstrom, our elections expert. I do know that we've had some elections in cities in Minnesota where nobody has filed, and therefore the person elected is going to be elected by write-in. And so we just have to be aware that in some small jurisdictions, there could be an issue where the write-in candidate will win because nobody's filed for those offices. Now, that's not very regular, but I think in the last major municipal election a year ago, this past November, we had a fairly large number of offices where nobody filed. So we need to make sure that this would all work within that kind of a construct as well. So.
And so the write-ins, did they want to, or is it just somebody saying, we want so-and-so, we want Joe Smith?
Madam Mayor, I think some people won without knowing that they were going to win, without campaigning, without actually putting their name in. So it does happen in some of the smaller jurisdictions, certainly not a city the size of Burnsville, but we do have cities that have less than 100 population, and in that population, it might only be 50 people that can vote. So it could happen that somebody will win without ever intending to run for office.
Okay.
Madam-
Senator Hall.
Madam Mayor, we'll work with our lobbyists
Yeah.
and try to figure something out with that.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you. Heather.
We have now come to the monitoring/tracking position statements. There's really only one that has changed, so I will give a rapid-fire review of these. The first one is opposing the extension of state-levied property taxes to additional classes of property. The second one is a little bit new. This was a splitting out of a different positions about data retention and being in favor of reasonable time period. We're in favor, as I mentioned, for the current law with respect to the police data. One of the things that we are concerned about is these proposals that require us to keep every email. So if you reply back, thank you, then you have to keep that, and there are real costs associated with maintaining all of those types of emails. Reseller legislation, again, the rest of these are not new. We oppose the legislation that would restrict the ability of police to access reseller information. The para, we support the cost sharing, but we are concerned about the ever-increasing costs, and so we keep that on our priority list. Public Employee Labor Relations Act arbitrations. PELRA has gotten better, but we just want to make sure we have on our monitoring that we want to have a balance between management and labor. Disposal of flushable products. This was a hot topic a couple of sessions ago, and we feel the state should regulate products that are known to damage water quality, sewer collection, and storm and wastewater systems. Private well drilling, we support current law with respect to well drilling, that we are allowed to prohibit that as it pertains to public health and safety. Aggregate mining fee, we support in the establishment of a host community fee at a level mutually agreeable on aggregate producers as well. So with that concludes our legislative agenda. Unless there are additional questions, I would stand for those.
Sandy?
I just have one question regarding the eminent domain. My personal opinion is that eminent domain has really been expanded to way past where I think it's appropriate. So when you're talking about eminent domain, what do you consider to be appropriate for taking private property?
Madam Mayor, Representative Mason, I asked Patty come up here from Metro Cities, as they do have an eminent domain position. This is really about cost associated with acquiring property through eminent domain. We think there's really an incentive in current law relating to why wouldn't you challenge it? And why wouldn't you continue to drag cities through the court process, cities and counties through the court process? Because at the end of the day, you don't have to pay for your attorney's fees. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Nauman to see what she's
Nauman,
to add.
welcome.
So, Madam Mayor and members, thank you. What I can add, I will provide some further detail later because I'm trying to recall exactly what the statute says with respect to public entities paying for certain costs for appraisals and so forth. But as I understand it, current law does sort of disincent homeowners sometimes from actually going through a process that might, well, let me rephrase it. I think sometimes homeowners, or the concern is that some may use the process for personal gain.
Yep.
So it is difficult for public entities to be able to negotiate a fair and balanced appraisal. And I would need to look at the statutes to recall why exactly that is, or what's the statutes say that causes that. But what cities are looking for, what Metro City's position supports, is having some ability to actually negotiate for a fair appraisal. And I do believe that requires
And
a
I'm
law
going to
change.
want, because we have some real experience here in Burnsville in 13 and 5, that Mr. Albrecht, our Public Works Director, can speak to, because we have had some real experience with that, and it has cost us a lot. Mr.
Yes, I think to
Albrecht.
clarify the question, it's not to change when you can use eminent domain. The way the statute is currently written is it actually encourages property owners and their attorneys to ask for the maximum amount, because based on how much you get, it requires repayment of a percentage of the attorney's fees related to that. So
right.
there's no incentive to settle for maybe what the appraised cost that comes in. There's an incentive to go way high and negotiate in the middle so that you meet minimum thresholds, and thereby it's not so much the property owners that have been in concern. We have seen legal firms and law firms trolling. So what they do is they'll contact the city and ask, what projects do you have coming up that are going to require eminent domain? And they will contact all the property owners on those projects and encourage them to contact them if the cities need to settle, because they know by this negotiation method they can get all of their fees paid for and maybe get a little additional cash for the property owners. And we're seeing that as a trend whereby we would typically settle for small pieces of property that at a reasonable amount. They're dragging out years on minor pieces, and we're ending up paying more in attorney's fees than the actual property is worth in some cases. And so we would like to clean up some of the language in the law related to fair and reasonable attorney's fees. Certainly not have any more leverage to take property. That's not what this is about. It's about timely settlements, cost for the public, but also being fair to the property owners too. That has to be balanced, but we want to have a fair process and not encourage others to gain through that process is what we're doing.
Unfairly. Councilmember Coughlin.
Just for point of information, the statute you're talking about is MnStat 117.03, and kind of what she is suggesting is, yes, there's reasonable attorney fees language in here. The problem with that is that the cap, there's no incentive. It should be a significantly lower cap, like a $10,000 cap or something, because if you read the statute, it's set up in differences of amounts so that as long as the lawyer or law firm asks for a greater amount and they come within a range, then they win and they're paid. And this is much higher than any other area of law. You don't get attorney's fees in any other area of law outside of fraud in settings like that, except for this provision. And obviously, what I hear is they're saying that there's an abuse, so you should cap the 117031 at a lower cap than they have.
Okay.
So.
Any other comments?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Ms. Nauman. Thank you. Senator Hall.
On a separate issue, every year it seems like fireworks increase comes up for Minnesota. Have you guys taken a stand on that? whether you think that should be something the city would promote
What?
or
Go ahead and
encourage.
light the fuse.
I'm going to go to our fire chief because.
I know what the fire.
I know what he's gonna say.
The thing is, you know, the other is, you know, with fireworks, so, for me, someone wants to pay for that, and our chief says that it's safe for the public?
So you have taken a stand?
No, we haven't.
Oh, okay.
No, but I mean, that's why I said for me personally, Chief Jungman.
Well, thank you, Senator Hall, for that question. You know our stance from the Fire Chiefs Association perspective. We are concerned about expanding it into aerial fireworks.
Yeah.
That you now lose control of it and you have a higher chance of injuring not only yourself but other people. So there's a concern for other people's safety when you now have them leave the ground, so.
Does our
It's always
police,
about the safety.
right, well, if it were more legal, the police maybe wouldn't have as much to do. Do we have a position from the police chief?
Chief? Isiki, drag your chair up here.
The fire chief would handle this, so I wouldn't have to get involved.
There you go.
Yeah.
You know, I do agree with the fire chief. You know, fireworks for us, when they leave the ground, it's potential problems in a lot of different ways. So the less challenges that we have out there day to day, we'd appreciate it. And it's, with the current law, the way it works, it seems to work fine. We haven't had significant issues, so I wouldn't support a change, and that's not something we've talked a lot about. So I don't, I haven't given a lot of thought, but just initially listening to what the fire chief said,
Okay.
I would be consistent with
Thank
our
you.
position as well.
For us, it's about the safety of the community.
Yeah, for us too.
So that's where I personally always come down on. One of the biggest things that people want us to make sure is that this community is safe.
Yep.
And people want to live here and their businesses continue to thrive and everybody has a place that they feel that they are safe.
Thank you.
Anything else? Yes, Senator
Madam Mayor,
Carlson.
there is one thing that came up last year, I think it was unofficially, and that is about the fireworks that is being municipal fireworks where there's a lot of it, and that there was some request that mayors notify veterans organizations when they were going to have it,
Yeah.
because it evidently is a significant issue with
Yes,
PTSD.
with veterans, yes.
And-
But you know what, for municipalities, like for Burnsville, we have a nonprofit that, it's the Fire Muster
That puts on the event.
who does that.
does the
And
lights
so
and
one of the things that I'm hearing you say is that the other difficult thing about that is the veterans who live here, they're protected, so we don't have all of their names. But we can certainly make sure that, because it's always in the paper, and perhaps
Fireworks
we
and
can have the
ceremony.
paper make sure that there's going to be fireworks on this night, so that they're aware of it.
I was not in favor of that initiative because I know in my neighborhood, there's as much fireworks going off in the neighborhood days beforehand.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think, and what made me mention it is, I've heard fireworks in my neighborhood in the last 2 weeks. Yeah, because I've heard rockets go off and then, heard the pops of the secondary explosions. So I know it was fireworks. So I don't know that there would be anything that could be achieved by making a municipality
Yeah.
be the communications of
Well,
this sort.
and that's something we can't do because we don't know when people are going to discharge those explosives, those fireworks.
I believe, by the way, Madam Mayor, I think all of those are illegal fireworks anyway.
From Wisconsin. Or all of us go get them.
The good ones.
Yes.
Okay.
Missouri.
Yes,
They have
Senator
people
Carlson.
vote over the top of their fire chiefs, apparently.
Senator
Well, I
Carlson.
do have a couple of questions on some of the things that we went on with, and we went over, but like the disposable products, the flushable products, we
Yeah.
did have quite a discussion about that. And I know the League of Minnesota Cities and the PCA, they were all very strongly requesting some kind of labeling that was different. And I actually did go through and looked at a lot of products in a grocery store, and those that are, they say they're flushable, but they're not biodegradable.
No.
And so I don't know where we're at with that, whether that's something that we should be pursuing, because I know the stories that we heard that were in the paper, where this is costing cities
Yeah.
and sewage disposal systems a lot of money.
Yeah.
And, and I don't know if we need to bring that back up again and do something about it, but it is a real problem for things that get flushed. And so if this is something that City of Burnsville is not a high priority, then we won't spend a lot of our time on it, but it is something that
I think our public work director will say it is a high priority. We just didn't push it up to the high priority. But it is, because it is a problem.
Mhm.
And I bet you the Met Council, because all of the
Yes.
waste goes into the wastewater treatment plant.
Madam Mayor,
Heather.
Senator Carlson, we can certainly help with examples and such as needed.
Okay. Again, primarily, that's one of cost because of maintenance that has
Yeah.
to be done regularly. And also, at times, it has evidently shut down some of the flow lines that
Yeah.
are in these
It becomes a
disposal
problem,
plants.
and then when it backs up for some people because it's been going out, and then it gets to a point where now it's going to have backup. Now we have problems with backup into basements and so forth.
Oh, boy.
Okay. I did have another question, Madam
Sure.
Mayor.
Yes, please.
And that was on, when we're talking about the, I paged past it, but it was where we're treating the code enforcers
Yeah.
similarly to state
Yeah.
code enforcers.
Yeah.
I had a question on that one. Do you have a bargaining unit that's representing those folks here in the city? And are you proposing that they join a bargaining unit that has that kind of protections?
No, Madam Mayor,
Yes,
Senator
Heather.
Carlson, this is a state statute change
Okay.
that we're
So
supportive of.
you're looking at just protections, the same as state workers?
correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Well, I want to thank you all for coming in and talking with us and for helping us during the legislative session. And with that, I wish you all a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.
Merry
Thank you so
Same
much.
to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will continue on, and the next item on our agenda is the review of the Ames Center Advisory Commission Policy 1.023. And presenting this evening is Julie Dorshak, the Community Service Manager, and Kathy Cleveland, the Ames Center Commission. So, welcome, ladies.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Madam Mayor, members of the council.
Thank you.
I don't know if there's room for the rest of the commission to come up to the
Yes,
table,
and
or
if
is there
the
not
commission
enough room?
would like to come to the table, that would be great. And yes, and, yeah, and then just bring some chairs to the table also.
Hi, Steve.
Yeah, just,
Great.
See the next year dances.
and welcome everybody, and thank you for the work that you do in helping us to make decisions. Okay,
All right, well, I'm going to kick this off, Madam Mayor, members of the council. We're going to walk through our agenda here. We'll do introductions here in a couple of minutes. I know that Kathy was going to do that.
why don't we
And-
do the introductions so people
introductions
who are
now?
watching
Okay.
on television would know, and we'll start right here. Okay, please give us your name so that our listening audience know who you are sitting around the table.
Sure. My name is Jessica Settergren.
Yes. And Jessica is a member of the commission.
Hi, Grant Gardner, also a member of the commission.
Good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. Amber Cameron, also a member of the commission.
Jane Bristow, member of the commission.
Yes.
Kathy Cleveland, Chair of the Commission, and Amber is Vice Chair.
Yes.
All right.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm Julie Dorshak. I'm the liaison to the Ames Commission, and so we're going to walk through some of our discussions and the brief history of the policy and review with you what some of the recommendations that we have for the policy that's established the Ames Commission. Our chair, Kathy Cleveland, will share those recommendations here in just a minute. I am going to start with a brief history about the policy and how it was established. It was established in January of 2010, about a year after the operations, after the facility was opened. It was originally the Burnsville Performing Arts Center Advisory Commission, and it changed to the Ames Center Advisory Commission in 2014. There has been a number of discussions that we have had regarding the commission over the last couple of years about the role of the commission and whether the policy is reflective of the work that is currently being done and whether it meets the expectations of City Council. We've had a number of revisions over the last couple of years to the Ames Commission. In 2014, the meetings were actually changed from every other month to quarterly, so we reduced the number of meetings per year. In 2015, the number of commissioners was also reduced from 9 to 7. And then just this last year, we did change the mission from while remaining financially self-sustaining to while working towards being self-sustaining. And even with those revisions, the commission is still feeling that the policy is not accurate or clear. So, which brings us to our meeting tonight. And in preparation of tonight's meeting, the following meetings were conducted. On October 4th, city staff, myself, and our city manager, Heather Johnston, our council liaison, Dan Gustafson, the executive director, Brian Luther. I'm sorry, we didn't introduce him. Brian is also here with us tonight, as well as John Seal with Venue Works Management Company.
Welcome.
Our chair, Kathy Cleveland, and Amber Cameron were also the vice chair, were in attendance at that meeting.
Mr. Luther, you want to come to the table, please?
Great. What we were finding is that there is a overlap between the expectations that were identified in our management contract with VenueWorks and the areas of oversight that were identified within the policy for the commission. And it was making it difficult for us to utilize the talents of each organization and who best is put into place to make those changes or to do that work. And then from there, a subcommittee of that group got together on November 1st, and that included myself, the chair, the vice chair, and Brian Luther, our executive director. From there, we really went through the policy pretty much paragraph by paragraph, word by word, and reviewed exactly what we thought was the role of the commission. And we utilized the policies that established the PNRC, the Parks and Natural Resource Commission, as well as the Economic Development Commission to help us streamline the policy and to be more consistent with these other city commissions. From there, we created the draft that we presented to the rest of the Ames Commission at their work session on November 6th. And we really had a great discussion, and we went through the policy again very closely, and we further refined that, and which brings us to tonight with those draft recommendations. I'm going to turn it over now to Kathy Cleveland, our chair for the commission.
Thank you, Julie. Madam Mayor, City Council members, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity for letting us present our updates, and we look for your feedback on this. As Julie mentioned, we reviewed the policy from top to bottom, and we really went through it very carefully. We also benchmarked two other commissions. One was an advisory commission, one was a city commission, both city commissions. And we looked at three things, and we kind of came up with three major updates. And that looked at adding language that more closely reviewed and more closely reflected the role of the commission as it is today. We also looked at language and added and deleted language that was more in line with the management VenueWorks roles and responsibility than that of the commission. And then we also changed language to more closely align with the other commissions as well as to reflect the role of the commissions. So 3 basic things that we did: we added, we changed, and we removed some. So I'd like to just walk through those briefly. There are 5, okay. There are 5 sections, and beginning with our mission statement. And as Julie mentioned, we did add, while working towards becoming financially self-sustaining, which we felt was extremely important. We request and recommend that the removal of, sorry, I have to put the cheaters on. Had another birthday, and I'd like to say that it's because of that, but that would be a lie. It's been a while. So we're requesting and recommending the removal of extending market beyond the city limits, because we felt that that was covered in the surrounding regions. So that was our major additions and removals on that one. This second section, the advisory commission purpose, is where the majority of our updates take place. Beginning with the title, the previous title was the advisory commission job description. We recommend changing that to purpose because we felt it was more robust as well as meaningful. We made many additions to this in language that closely reflects the role of the commission today, such as actively giving input to the contract operations through approval of annual budget. These are things that we have been doing for quite some time now, but it was not reflected in the policy as it stands. That includes the responsibility of researching, reviewing, making recommendations to the city council. That was also language in other commissions' advisory policy that we would recommend aligning with. We also have including input in the contract operations via, monitoring and monthly review of the financial reporting, quarterly metrics, which we are currently doing and have been as well. We removed details that we felt were the responsibility of VenueWorks and identified as the management contract responsibility. And then we added the 2 bullet points that we are currently doing, which is participating in the RFP process and the selection of the management company. And we also added providing opportunity for citizen input via, of course, attendance of public meetings and a survey that we will be working on in 2018. So the major changes occurred in this section. If we go to the next one, self-governing style. After reviewing the other commissions, the advisory commission policies, we did not find this section in any of those. We looked closely at the language and, we felt that it was often repeated in the Code of Conduct section, so we are recommending the removal of this section. That pulls the Code of Conduct up to the section 3, and there were no changes recommended in this section at all. Another area of concentration and some changes were section 4, which was the decision-making process and the role of chair. In order to keep this section gender neutral, it went from chairman to chairperson, and it was kind of interchangeable. We wanted to keep that neutral, so we're recommending simply a change to chair and vice chair from that. And the next session is the responsibility and authority. There are no changes to this, and our fifth it is our fifth and final section, and it concludes our policy revisions. Do we have any
Thank you.
questions?
Members of the council, questions, comments? Okay. Well, it seems like that you've been very diligent in going through each and every section. When I looked at the draft update and all of the red lines, and this is in this piece. In A, it says the Ames Center Advisory Commission, and I'm wondering why we have the word advisory for this commission when all the other commissions just have the Planning Commission, Parks and Natural Resource Commission, Economic Development Commission. I think that should be struck, and that's the consistency. That's what I hear you all saying, that you want to be consistent with all the others, so it doesn't make sense that that word is there. All commissions are advisory commissions to us.
It's redundant.
All of them are. So
Madam
to
Mayor?
have that
Yes.
as part of it, that should be struck.
We'll strike that from all of the, okay?
The other is that, so then it should also be struck by shall be an advisory body. All of you know that you are advisors to us. And I think you're talking about wanting to be consistent with all the other commissions. So I think you need to take a look at that.
Okay.
Because all commissions are advisory commissions. So you might, you might want to leave that in, but. So let me ask you this question with Mr. Luther here. So the responsibility of researching, reviewing, and making recommendations on issues related to the Ames Center. Give me what that looks like.
Madam Mayor, that was also language that was, appeared in both commissions that we benchmarked. And the researching piece
So
comes.
I see that in the Economic Development and Redevelopment Commission, because the Planning Commission is by statute, and everything there is by code and zoning laws.
We did not review the planning commission just for that very fact that it was created by the state of Minnesota. It wasn't by
So
statute.
you're looking at the same language then from the Economic Development and Redevelopment Commission.
Let me see. I didn't bring the EDC information
Parks
with
and
me, but
Natural
we can go
Resource
back and review. But the Parks and Recreation, the Parks and Natural Resource Commission definitely had that same language in it.
Okay. Because I heard you say you wanted to be consistent with other commissions, so that's
Correct.
why. So, okay.
Correct.
Yes, Councilmember Keating.
Well,
Okay.
I like the new additions.
Yeah, I do too.
In section 2, but I'd actually really like to hear Councilmember Gustafson's thoughts behind these changes and why, because he can give us more of that council perspective, and his history with the Ames Center was pretty lengthy.
It was a lengthy discussion. As the liaison to the Ames Commission, I basically gave a lot of input as far as the history of the Ames Center and how we got to where we're at. It was this group here that did the work, and everything you see here came out of this group. But the only influence I had on them was just kind of providing information that they didn't have, and the history they didn't have going forward on this, which I think what as a liaison should be doing.
Agreed.
And the only thing that I heard, and I just wanted to make sure that you are being consistent with other commissions as well, because
you,
that's what I heard
Madam
you
Mayor.
all say, that you wanted to be.
Correct.
Yes, thank you, Madam
Yeah.
Mayor.
And the thing is, there was a reason why we put this commission in place, but now Venue Works and Mr. Luther is doing a wonderful job in terms of managing the operation, because that's what they're charged to do. And so what I'm seeing you look at is both the contract and then what you're doing in terms of being a part of taking a look and working with our management company.
Yes.
Mr. Luther?
Yes, no, I agree with that, and I think the commission members did a great job going through this thoroughly and really identifying the areas that really they felt the oversight was appropriate for, and really identifying areas that really are the responsibility of VenueWorks and the management team, and then the areas of oversight that the commission will oversee on behalf of city council. So I think the process was very good, and I think it really identified things a lot better than it was in prior.
And I think this shows an evolution of where we've come from.
Yes.
From the very beginning in the building of the building to the change in management and that bridge and transfer, and then to Mr. Luther, who's taking it to the next level. So thank you.
Thank you.
And so I see this as really working in the right direction. So thank you, because, yeah, we're there. Councilmember Keeley.
Well, I'll just echo your sentiments. Very nice work. And we get to interview all of you when we make the appointments. And, sometimes this is a bit dry work and a little tedious. But I really do like the new language. A little more straightforward, easier to work with. I think easier for the commission today and in the future to work with. So compliments, great work, and thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for your service to the community.
Yeah, and it's consistent with everything else, which is great, and that was your intent.
And one of our major intents was to not overlap the role of responsibility for management, because oftentimes we felt.
Because they're the experts.
Absolutely, and we want to let them do what they do
their
best.
work. Yeah.
And thank you to Mr. Seal for being here tonight and support and.
I appreciate a very astute and comprehensive review of this. I'm a big fan of fewer words than more.
Yeah.
And I think this completely defines.
If you want to move your chair here to speak so that the people
Yes.
at home can see who's speaking and can hear you. Yes, yes. And so just introduce yourself again so our residents.
John Seal, Chief Operating Officer with VenueWorks.
Okay.
And my very candid comment is this is a very astute review and observation and changes in here. And I am a big fan of fewer words than more. Say what you mean. Legalese has a place, but in a document like this, I think you need to say what the purpose is and what the charge is and who's going to do what. And I think that's been done very effectively.
Okay, members of the council, I think if you have nothing else to add, what we can do is direct staff and the commission to bring a clean copy for adoption on a consent agenda.
Yes, agreed.
Okay? All righty.
Thank you
That's
very
what you
much.
needed,
Thank
and
you.
thank you so much. And I want to thank the commission for your hard work, and thank you for VenueWorks and Ms. Steele. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate everything that you do and continue to do a good work.
And everybody
I
have a
mean,
happy
and
holiday.
Thank you.
so
You
you
too.
have
Merry
to give
Christmas.
a plug for all of the shows that are coming up, because I've been, do it.
Well, I think
Everybody
you
is
still have,
watching.
yeah, you still have time to get to Tonic Sulfa. You got about a half an hour before they go on stage tonight. We have Ole and Lena for 2 shows on Thursday, a matinee and an evening, and then we have Weekend with Rhythmic Circus, Red and Green Show.
I'm going to be there.
Yes, you
Yes.
are, and I would recommend everyone in the viewing
Saturday.
audience to come to that performance. It's just amazing, and it's fun for all ages. It's fun for everyone. They just do a phenomenal show.
And Lori Line was fabulous, as always.
Yes, yeah, she did a great job. So we also still have some tickets left for the late performance for Louis Anderson on New Year's Eve.
I know, he's doing 2.
He's doing 2 performances.
Two performances on
That's a
New
great
Year's
show.
Eve.
Yeah, so those are going fast. So definitely go to our website at aimcenter.com and take a look at what we have. We've got a lot of options. So thank
Thank
you.
you.
And I want to thank City Council, Madam Mayor, and City Council members. Thank you.
Thank you, and good luck. And Merry
Have a good
Christmas,
work.
everyone, and Happy Holidays. Okay, okay. Next item on the agenda, and this is the electronic cigarettes and the related tobacco product follow-up discussion. Hello, Mr. Forsland.
Hello.
Welcome.
and Happy holidays, everybody.
Yes, happy holidays.
Just to get started here, as soon as I catch my breath here, this subject originally came up in, I believe it was the all-day work retreat back in February 2014. So it was nearly 4 years ago that this subject was first broached by council to take a look at. At that time, what council asked for was to have staff come back with some updates. At that time, the FDA did not have any guidance documents as far as e-cigarettes and the vaping products and how they were going to be regulated. And as that has happened in July of this year, council asked us to bring it forward again because we had some new information to provide as far as these products go. Summary of what's changed since then is July of 2014, the state of Minnesota included e-cigarettes and the vaping products into their definition of tobacco products, which allowed that to be regulated through the state. And the federal government came forward and made that decision that they were going to consider these nicotine delivery devices as regulated products as well. And since that time, we've come to find out that e-cigarettes, the nicotine-containing juices are all also taxable and can be regulated by local government through their tobacco licenses. So electronic cigarettes are prohibited, and just to summarize this real quick, all government buildings and pretty much most healthcare facilities, as well as daycares. Where they're not prohibited, however, which are different from other tobacco products or related, are in bars, restaurants, private clubs, hotel motels, for example, as well as some private workplaces, offices, and retail stores. So it's been primarily left up to the owner or the operator of the business whether they're permitted or not. What our comparable cities are doing, our market cities, Burnsville and Plymouth have really not addressed the issue yet into the code, but they do address, they do permit, well, Burnsville permits it in tobacco shops for sampling, and some of the cities right now, even as we speak, are looking at adding age requirements, raising the age of 21, or including flavored products as well. So this has been kind of a moving target as we've researched this and reviewed that a little bit. Current status, we have about 40 active retail tobacco licenses. And if we were to add licensure to the stores that provide vaping products or these type of products, and we'd add about 3 more licenses. Dakota County does have the authority to license tobacco shops in those municipalities that choose not to regulate it. They've been looking, there is a draft ordinance that they have right now, but have not adopted it yet. That's the status with Dakota County. So why do we want to license locally is enforcement is best performed at the city level or county level where it can be more effectively managed. I know at least in my time here, we've used that at least once where we could take some licensing action. It also provides for rapid response for if there's complaints or abuses, and our local, our police department are dealing with it in quickly. And can be tailored to the community needs, and much like other cities are doing, whether it be raising the age or perhaps addressing some of the local concerns. And in many instances, local authority can be more stringent. And Minneapolis is doing this. They've basically taken the places that are covered under the Freedom to Breathe Act or Minnesota Clean Indoor Air Act and applied it to these products. So it's consistent for any tobacco-related products across the board. And cities are authorized by statute to recover those costs, and thus, if we were to do this, to ultimately be budget neutral. So the question is, future action, we do have to amend the current ordinance, reflect what statutory changes are. But the question for council here tonight is, do we need to draft a new ordinance to include other options such as purchase age limits, anything along that line? Those are all kind of detailed in the packet that you were provided, and the discussion works. Yes?
Councilmember Schultz?
My question is, my understanding from the information that staff brought back earlier was that we actually do not have to do an ordinance because the county is looking at that. There was nothing within the state statute that said we had to do this. This was an option for us to do, but we did not have to. Is that still correct, or was that wrong information?
Ms. Faulkner?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, Councilmember Schultz, in doing our research for additional information, we've learned that it's an all or nothing the way the statute's written. So when they added e-cigarette nicotine delivery devices as a tobacco product in the statute, we can't pick and choose what we regulate if we're going to regulate it locally. So we have to amend our ordinance to be consistent.
To regulate all tobacco products.
Otherwise, we'd be unregulated cigarettes.
So to make sure that I understand, the all or nothing means if we did not regulate it, we would not be regulating any tobacco products whatsoever.
That's correct.
That would be one thing that is an option. The other option is that you regulate all of them, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
differentiation is if you want to be more strict than the statute, as some other cities have done and are looking at doing. If you want us to do that, we certainly can bring back more information. We're not suggesting that. We just know we have a situation now where we need to amend the ordinance to be compliant with the statute if we want to continue to license tobacco.
Thank you.
I'm going to go to Heather, and then I'm going to Bill.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Schultz, it is a change from our understanding and what our understanding was even a month ago. So thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, Councilmember Kaufman.
And just to further clarify, if we act and then the county passes something more restrictive, we're not bound by,
Yeah.
based on what you said, their restriction.
Yeah.
So that,
So we control rather than the
Correct.
county controls,
so
is what
that
you're
if they
saying.
want to be more restrictive.
Yeah.
And we didn't act, then we're stuck with what
Yeah.
they may do based on.
Is that,
So we have no
is
control
that
if the county
correct?
acts.
So say we adopt whatever, and then say the county adopts something more restrictive.
But then we already have ours in place.
But doesn't theirs then supersede ours?
No, no.
We can't be less strict than
Yeah.
state statute.
We can't be less strict than state statute. So if they do pass something that's more restrictive, whatever we do doesn't matter. We have to follow what's more restrictive.
No. I'm going to go to Ms. Faulkner and then to
Now I'm
Councilmember Kaufman.
confused.
Yeah, I
Yes.
think we can be more strict than state statute when
Yeah,
it comes
we
to
can.
this particular licensing.
That's
But
not
the-
our question, though.
But the way
Mine
the
is
s-
opposite.
Correct.
But the way the statute is written, if cities do not adopt it,
Yeah.
then the cities may adopt it, counties shall.
Shall.
So if we do not choose to regulate it, the county has to regulate it, and they can have more strict. So in township areas where there is no regulation, the county adopts a rule, it wouldn't affect us because we already have rules in
Yeah.
place. We
Yeah.
chose to do it.
Okay.
And just to
Yeah,
further
Councilmember
clarify,
Coughlin.
there is no preemption
Yeah.
at that level, because it's not in terms of preemptive government.
Yeah.
It's not a preemptive design. A county
Yeah.
in that setting would not preempt us.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
We
Thank
have,
you.
we have more control over our own destiny rather than the county.
So I want to go on the record that I would propose we adopt the minimal state requirements as to e-cigarettes.
That means we regulate all tobacco.
But
like
make
we have
no
right now.
more restrictive changes as to age or anything else. It's just whatever the minimal.
Finish your thought. Are you, is that
Yes,
it?
that's,
So what you're saying is that what we do have on the books now with regard to tobacco products, then have the vaping products be part of that? Which is
Correct.
what we have right now.
Correct.
You're just adding that into the
Correct.
mix. So it's all tobacco products.
I totally
Yeah.
agree with that.
Pardon me?
I totally agree with that.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else?
With the state statute, we don't have any choice. We have to come into compliance or we're going to unregulate tobacco,
Well, that's
smoking
just it.
tobacco. I
Yeah.
mean, the cigarettes and
Yeah.
et cetera. So
But all
we don't have any
tobacco
choice.
products.
All I want to do is come in compliance with
Yeah.
state statute as
Yeah.
stated.
Okay. So the consensus is we need to be in compliance with state statute. That means all tobacco products, including vaping, the e-cigarettes. Okay?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. We will work with the city attorney on preparing a draft ordinance so we're consistent with the
Come on a
state
consent
statute.
agenda.
And we'll have it on a consent agenda. Thank you.
Everybody's clear? Okay, we're moving on. Discussion on the ideal development for AAA land. And Mr. Nienhuis and Ms. Faulkner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
This item is basically a check-in from staff on council's desire. As council is well aware, the EDA owns a piece of land in the heart of the city that is typically referred to as the AAA land. There's been a sign on that land for a number of years. We've done a couple of RFPs. The last two RFPs have elicited absolutely no response. In checking with some developers and with our financial consulting firm, it's been explained to us that developers are reluctant to reply to RFPs because of the unknown factors. It's been suggested to us that if we picked one desirable development we would like and pursued that, we may be more successful. As noted in your background, we have had two conversations within the last month with two different entities that have been talking about hotels, one of which did submit a letter of intent. However, the letter of intent had very few details, so staff could not make any recommendations. We have answered that letter of intent. We have explained to the broker what type of details we would need. The broker has indicated that their client may be coming back with additional details. We also have had a conversation with a Heart of the City business that is telling staff that they are looking at putting together a partnership to buy the parcel, and also in both cases, it's a hotel proposal in both cases. What staff is asking at this point is if neither of those prove fruitful, would council wish to have one desired development that we go forth and try and get a developer for? And if that's your intent, then we'd also need to know what that desired development would be. And having said that, Madam Mayor, I'd certainly answer any questions and then seek your direction.
My question is with the hotel product, is it low end, mid, or high end? Will it have a flag?
Are you
on the hotel product with the letter of intent that you received?
That's one of the requests staff has. There was no indication of what type of a product.
Well, let me tell you that one of the things that we continue to work on is that if we get a low end, like you brought in the Select one time, that does not help us with moving the needle with regard to the market and our average daily rates. We have a lot of that product already in Burnsville.
I agree, Madam. And again, the letter of intent did not have a flag indication. That's one of the reasons why staff returned it and told the developer we would need to know what type of product you're proposing before we bring that to you, to this body.
Yeah. Councilmember Coughlin.
Well, I just personally have an issue with trying to decide what is better than something else. So that's just sort of my philosophy of not getting into that arena and leaving it to market force, saying that I want this or that. I just philosophically, I'm just not comfortable with that.
Councilmember Keeley and then Councilmember Gustafson.
Well, going way back, a hotel with a higher end flag has been the desire. The synergy with the Ames Center and a hotel, the entrance of a higher end hotel in the northern part of the city has benefits across different areas and platforms of the city. Aside from that, if in my opinion, if we were getting any interest by a hotel, it would have to meet some criteria that would be to the upper end, upper half of the hotel product out there with the amenities, the quality, and the room rates. I don't know how much we can dictate that, and I don't want to necessarily, put our city attorney in a position. So I think a guideline to that, in my opinion, is what we've been looking at all along. I don't think that's changed. However, short of that, I believe a mixed-use, high-density residential with commercial on the bottom floor is a great fit as a second choice, along with the product that is attempted to be put on a property across the street. To have another property like that fills out the heart of the city's ideal vision, And I think to Councilmember Coughlin's point, I am absolutely, wanting to kind of leave it open. And it's great that there is a hotel or two different owners that are looking to put a hotel there, as long as it's a quality product. And if there's someone that's going to come to the table and bring a product similar to the Chase across the street, fabulous. Outside of that, I'm not sure what else would really fit there.
Yeah.
Or
Well,
desired to go there, other than maybe an office
Yeah.
building. And that could be a challenge for us to say, do we want more office space? The market doesn't support that right now, so I don't think we have a lot to worry about. But anyway, so I still believe a great quality hotel next to that Ames Center brings all kinds of opportunities for economic development for the area. But for that, then mixed-use, high-density residential would be great.
I'm in the same boat. I mean, I don't think we should get hung up on a flag necessarily. There are a lot of boutique hotels out there that are very, very nice, that are owned by individual families and that
Sure.
that can create a very, very good product to our city. So I think it needs to be more the quality of the hotel that's coming in that we should be concerned about, instead of whether it carries a Hilton or Holiday Inn or anything like that on it. I really would like to see a hotel down there because it has been on our list for a long time, but the mixed use is really important. With that orange line coming in, we also start meeting some criteria for supporting that orange line for ridership and that, which meets some of the Metropolitan Council criteria for some of the things we want to get done in the city. And so it's a good opportunity to get more of the young professional in that area, living in that area, especially the ones that work downtown but would like to live out here because it's less expensive to live out here. When you take that bus every 15 minutes downtown, that can provide good ridership. And of course, as we know, that hopefully it's going to go off to the Burnsville Center as well and just kind of create the whole synergy in that area. But again, I think we have to look at what the market's going to bring us. If it's a quality product that's going to benefit the city, then we go with it. You know, I would say this, though, if we're going to market that land, maybe we have a broker market that land for us instead of us trying to do it.
We've tried that, didn't we?
No, we have not, Madam Mayor.
Have a broker?
Nope.
No. What we are prepared to do right now is MNCAR, which is the Association of Commercial Brokers, does have a platform in which you can list properties. We have paid for the opportunity to do that, and after tonight's discussion, which it appears that it's going to be, I think the direction is going to be stay the course as we are. We will put it on that and go forward from there. I caution the council in engaging a broker. If you engage a broker, then you've got to be willing to allow them to sell the land for anything in the HOC district.
Yeah, and that has always been the issue. Councilmember Schultz, you have a comment?
You know, I like the broker idea. I don't think we should get too far into limiting our choices on, or being so selective that we could have some issues on what business goes in there.
Yeah.
So me personally, I'm really open.
Councilmember
I
Gustafson.
was just going to add, the broker works for us, and they'll do what we want them to do. The reason I talk about a broker is because they have contacts nationally. They deal with these people day in and day out. That's how their Portillo's ends up in town and places, things like that, because these brokers have connections everywhere, and they deal with these developers constantly. They're looking for land, and if they're part of this deal, they're going to be out there seeking it. MNCAR's a good platform. I'm a member of MNCAR myself. I put buildings on there, but it's not like some of these commercial brokers that really have those contacts that are deep rooted all over the country.
Mr. Nienhout, do you want to speak a little bit more in terms of what are the challenges for us on the benefit and the disadvantage of a broker?
The advantages, they quite possibly could move the property sooner. I believe the disadvantage is there's a number of uses that are allowable in the heart of the city. If I'm a broker and I'm looking to make money to sell this property, I want to sell the property for any use that's
That's right,
allowable.
because they're out there to make money.
Yes, I do not want to be limited to a hotel or a mixed-use product.
Yep.
We can certainly engage a broker and tell them those are the parameters. My feeling is, we're not going to get a hard effort out of them when we're limiting what they want to do. I think as long as we want to have a little more control in that there will be things we won't allow on there that even though they're allowed in the district, I think staying the course is our best option.
Yeah, put it on MNCAR and stay the course, because I believe that if we just allow our people, I've been talking to some of the folks, whether it's hotel, office, or mixed use, these are opportunities that are still open. To narrow our sphere leaves us out, and then that we're only going to be focusing on one product. But to let the market bring something to us that, and I would say stay the course and not have a broker at this point. Put it on MNCAR and see where we go with that. Right now, anything can happen. Councilmember Keeley.
I know that it's been on the market for a long time, but the one dynamic that is, Dan Gustin, Councilmember Gustin noted, really has entered the picture just in the last year is the Orange Line stop there. I mean, granted, it's been, I don't know how many years, of vacant land, 10 years.
Correct, Councilman.
9 of those 10, there wasn't a transit stop discussion going in there. It was basically, and quite frankly, 9 of those years, there was a no rental rule that kept developers out. So really, we've had it on the market with the right options and potential for about a year, maybe a little longer. And I think I'm okay with staying the course, because I think over the next year or so, we're going to see a lot more activity than we had in the prior 9.
I would also say, Councilmember Keeley, that over those 9 years, had we allowed a rental project on that parcel, we probably could have sold it 3 times.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, and the other thing, just a question on the, Mr. Sherman's property, which we owned, was the Night Seed property that we bought when we had the tools to do all of that. Now we're getting the tools back. So we bought the Night Seed property, and then he has it. And we did approve a mixed-use development there, but it was condos. So we should take a look at that and have a conversation with him about that also, that it could be rental. You have?
I have had a number of conversations with one of his brokers.
Yeah.
For a while this summer, I actually expected they would bring forth a deal, but it does not appear. But yes, he's very aware that we would be open
we've
to
changed.
more types of uses on his property.
Yeah. Because I think Mr. Sherman would much rather build a rental property, a mixed use on that property.
Yeah.
That's on the south side of the Ames Center. So what I hear is consensus, stay the course, put it on MNCAR, and let's see what we can bring in. I think the economy has changed, that we could get something.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Okay. The next item on the agenda is the water meter replacement project, and there's no action on this one. Ms. Hardy, our administrative director, service director, is giving us a report on this. And congratulations, Mr. Albrecht, on the installation of this huge project. And then we'll hear more about it, but I think.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. This is the last item we have for you this evening, so I'll move through this as quickly as possible. You had a pretty detailed background, so and I won't spend a lot of time on the details, but I do want to kind of paint a picture of the landscape and what's happening and how this project came to be, and then give you a status. So we'll move through pretty quickly this evening. like any other of the large initiatives we do, we want to make sure that we're meeting your vision for the community and want to make sure that we're connecting things with the ends and outcomes that you adopt every year. So this project fits the financial management end, which is we're managing the project in a cost-effective and responsible manner. We maintain the highest standards of service for reasonable investment. So just to give you a little background on the project, the city has about 16,800 meters in the system, in the entire city. Currently, this initiative, or before this initiative was undertaken, we utilized what's called a drive-by system to take that water meter consumption data that's used for billing. So under this drive-by system, which is called automated meter reading, so AMR system, we actually have a consultant that drives through the entire community for several days a month to collect the water use data. They get that filed to us in a secure way. We upload that into our billing system, and that's how we generate our bills monthly. So with this new project, we're implementing something called an AMI system. So AMR, the drive-by, AMI, automated infrastructure, advanced metering infrastructure, AMI system, which is that next generation technology. It's got a lot of advanced features, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But the AMR system, the old drive-by system, is about 13 years old. It's nearing the end of its life cycle. And the meters are also aging. They range in age from 10 to 27 years old. And the large commercial meters, about half of those that we have in the city, are on the older end of the spectrum, ranging in age from 15 to 27 years old. And that's important because as they are aging and nearing the end of their life cycles, those meters are starting to slow down. They underreport water use, and what that means is you're having unmetered water and sewage go through and enter into the city's water distribution system, and that results in lost revenue for the city. Let me just back up here. So December of 2014, you authorized the project. It's a multi-year project, and that is to replace the residential, commercial, and irrigation meters throughout the entire city. So that's what we're talking about this evening. One thing that was not noted in your backgrounds, but I do think it's important to note, is that in 2016, so not too long ago, you passed a resolution or adopted a resolution to accept an offer from the Minnesota Public Facilities Authority, so PFA, for a loan. That loan is $7.3 million. And it's for 20 years, and it will provide a savings of up to $1 million over the life of the project due to the interest savings. And that interest rate, we were able to lock in and secure at 1.268% annually. So I wanted to note that this evening. Why are we doing this project? It's really because we're planning for the future. We want to take care of our infrastructure, and we want to plan for the future. Take care of the things that we invest in. So for this project to move forward, it was important that the replacement of the meters be a proven long-term solution. So the city selected meters with a 20-year accurate reporting life, and that's important for two reasons: to provide more accurate revenue collection, so we're not experiencing that lost revenue, and then to decrease the frequency of replacement. So there are meter products that are solid meter products on the market, very reputable, and but they have 10-year life, and we wanted something that was a little bit more long-term. We also wanted a solution that would be flexible, adaptable, and to the extent future-proof, so interoperable with future systems. We wanted a turnkey solution. We wanted the ability to leverage the extensive fiber network that we have invested in the city. So other solutions, again, very reputable solutions. The alternative is to use cellular technology, and while that's a viable solution for many communities, we wanted to make sure that we were leveraging investments that we've already made. Security and accuracy were important.
Two-way communication, which is an advantage of that next-gen technology through the AMI, was also key. We wanted robust data reporting analytics tools, so we could enhance our customer service. And then alarm notifications. Just to give you an example, the types of alarm notifications we're getting now are pretty awesome. If you think about it, right now it's winter. Buck Hill is a great example. They're making a lot of snow. And so we're able, through our new system, to set thresholds for how much water goes through a meter before we're alerted. And we can investigate and dispatch people if needed. So right now, Buck Hill's making a lot of snow. They're throwing alarms like crazy. So they have a great communication method with us. We can kind of line up when they're communicating, they're making the snow, match that to, okay, yep, they're making snow, to what we're seeing in our system. Now, if those alarms were going off in summer, we certainly would be on that right away. So the system's been very useful so far. The budget impact. So our original budget in the 2015 to 2019 CIP was $8.7 million. What we ended up with after all of the bidding and all the project costs was $7.4 million. And this really was reflective of a really competitive bidding market for us. We really got some great pricing on our infrastructure. So the project was divided into two separate procurement phases. Procurement of those meters, the AMI system, and then implementation through an RFP process. And then we did a low bid process for the installation, so the actual deployment of meters in the community. The census meters is what we selected, and that infrastructure and the AMI system were procured through HD Supply. They're now called Core and Main, and they're located in Eden Prairie, Minnesota, so a local company. And council, you awarded this contract with them for $4.8 million. After some value engineering, we were able to get that price down to $3.3 million. As for the installation, we partnered with their Kettle Corp. They're doing business as Utiliuse. So when you're driving through the community, you might be seeing their trucks. They're labeled Utiliuse. Those are our installers. They were the lowest responsible bidders at $3.4 million. And that did include plumbing services for some of the downsizing and the more complex commercial meters that we would be working on. Utiliuse is located or headquartered in Texas. However, I will say they've done a phenomenal job in really trying to hire local workers for this project. So getting the word out to the public has been a big challenge. We know it was a big project and we'd be impacting people and businesses. So a detailed and robust communication plan was an important part of the project. At the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're having a positive experience for everybody that's going through this, and we wanted to minimize disruption to the extent possible. So the first challenge was getting the word out and helping residents and businesses really understand what to expect and how to prepare for that meter change out. So we did a series of things. We published a webpage with information about the project's contact information, a place where you could submit questions or feedback. This information is also available in 4 different languages: Spanish, Russian, Hmong, Somali, and then, of course, English. BCTV staff, our talented crew, actually helped us produce a public service announcement video that also walks folks through how to prepare for their change out. We did a project overview letter or introductory letter, letting people know what to expect, as well as a fact sheet, which was mailed out to every residence and business. And then another thing to note is that our Utiliuse, key staff from Utiliuse and then our staff project team actually made site visits before the project even started deploying meters to a lot of the commercial properties where we knew we'd have more complex plumbing required, and they really worked with the property owners, the tenants, and the maintenance staff to make sure that they knew what to expect They could identify any issues in advance and have some time to repair them before their meter needed to be replaced, and then really talk about how they could minimize the business disruptions. So all these commercial properties, they're doing business, and our installers wanted to make sure that they were minimizing the disruption to those businesses. We had just a whole host of other communications collateral for this project. Some of the examples you can see on the slides here: door hangers for missed appointments. We did postcards with information on how and when to schedule the appointments, and then a series of letters, just reminding people that if they haven't made their appointment, to do so. As you can imagine, with a project of this magnitude, the scope does not come without planning, more planning, and more planning. And so we really had a great project team. We've worked really well with all of the stakeholders, and we came up with a very deliberate plan for a slow rollout. So for the first 3 months of the project, we started with 3 installers doing 10 installations a day. We focused on doing city-owned meters first. We did that because we wanted to make sure that if there were issues, we weren't impacting the public, and that we could understand the process and be ready and available to answer questions should they come up from the public. Then we started south of County Road 42 and have been slowly working our way north in the city. The main reason for this is because not all of our collector sites are up. Those collector sites are what allows our system, the meter data, to go into the system and talk back to our billing data or our billing system. So if with the absence of one of those meters in the north area of the city, we would have some dead spots or be at risk for dead spots, and we didn't want to have that as an issue. If we're not able to read a new meter, the new meters are not compatible with the old system. If we had dead spots, we weren't able to read a new meter, we would actually have to dispatch staff into the field to manually get those reads, and that's the situation we wanted to avoid. And we also did a gradual ramp up with lots of testing, but by midsummer, we were at full strength, and we had 5 installers doing 13 installations a day. This next visual is just to give you a sense of how we've kind of planned for moving through the city. Each installer is assigned a route that's a pinpointed area, color-coded, and they're kind of in a zone or an area in a neighborhood. So each of those routes or colors has approximately 200 properties associated with it, and the goal is for the installer to perform 95% of those changeouts before moving on to the next route. In terms of planning, I just wanted to give you a sense, and I know this is really small, but I wanted to give you a sense of how we set up and planned for what that ramp up would look like, how we would be at full capacity, how long we anticipated before we would be done with substantial completion. And then and some of the lower pieces in there toward the bottom show when we would need our shipments to come. So we would have the right size meters and the right inventory to handle those installations. So fully ramped up at 5 installers, as I just mentioned, with doing 13 planned installations a day, means that we're achieving 65 installations every day, 325 a month, and that's just a minimum number. So that assumes a 5-day work week. We do take appointments as requested on Saturdays. And installers, if they get through their appointments quickly and they have some time, they're doing canvassing in the neighborhoods and trying to get as many appointments done as possible. So it's hard to see, but if in December of 2017, it says we should be at 13,300. So how are we doing? We're not quite there. We're at about 11,030. We're actually about 11,196 as of this morning. But 11,030 at the time that we put this report together for you. That's 65% completion. In terms of budget, again, $7.4 million budget. Our expenditures through December 1st have been $4.5 million. So I just want to touch on why we're behind a little bit. Early on during our functionality testing, we did discover a major issue with our GPS coordinates. there was a discrepancy with what was being brought in in the field by the handhelds as it compared to what we had in our already in our city database. It seems trivial, but it's actually quite important. And this is because, well, let me start, explain what the issue was a little bit. For example, GPS coordinates were showing that we had meters in Lakeville, Iowa, Minneapolis, even the Cape Horn of Africa, which is a 0, latitude and longitude, if anybody wants to know. This having the GPS coordinates was a business requirement, a system requirement. So they needed to fix that. But it's important to us because when we're changing out irrigation meters, when we're thinking about commercial meters, knowing where to go and getting there quickly if there's an issue is actually very important to us. So with the irrigation meters, they're outdoors. They may be covered by shrubs or overgrown grass or weeds. And so having those coordinates is very important for our staff to be able to locate it. If we think about some of the large commercial complexes like Burnsville Center, having those GPS coordinates and some description will help us identify knowing what door to go into. So we're not wandering around the entire huge complex trying to locate this meter. So it's actually a very important piece. So we wanted to make sure that we got that right. And as you keep adding 65 meters a day, it was a manual fix. So we didn't want to compound that. So we did a deliberate slowdown to make sure that we had a good handle on that before deploying additional meters in the field. And that's been since resolved. Other reasons for the delay, there was a small fire at the manufacturing plant, which meant we got meters, but we didn't get radios. So we needed the radios to be deployed with the meters. So our inventory was dwindling down, and we had to do a planned slowdown to make sure that we weren't canceling appointments on people. So we did that. And then we were also impacted by the hurricane earlier in the year down in Texas. Just some logistics with that. Our inventory was decreasing. They weren't able to ship nationwide. Everything was backed up with trucking, and so we had to wait our turn. We did unfortunately have to reschedule 11 or 12 people as a result of those issues, but our good friends in Savage, who are also going through this project with the same group, same meters, actually had some additional stock, and they allowed us to utilize their stock so we wouldn't have to do more rescheduling. So we're very thankful to their partnership with that. So overall, that combination of delays set us back about 30 days, and we're trying to make that up as much as we can without risking injury or property damage. So quickly touching on the other pieces for current status on this slide, system functionality testing has been complete. We've achieved seamless billing, which is great for our customers. 3 of the 4 collector units have been installed. So those 3 are on water towers in the city, so Buck Hill, Colonial Hills, Heather Hills. And the 4th and final tower was expected early this fall. That's going in North River Hills Park, and it's not going on a water tower, rather a monopole, which was approved by you all earlier in the year. That actually, we just received news that it shipped on Friday. We expect that later this week. We are so excited that we'll be able to get that in. And once that's up and running, they say once it's here, it's going to be about a week. We'll be up and running. We'll be able to move more aggressively to the north of the city in terms of installations. And then finally, we're doing weekly performance testing. And this really allows us to look at how our meters are functioning in the system. So for example, if we had a meter that was installed and has been installed for a month, and all of a sudden we're not getting any reads, it was reading 100% and now we're not getting anything, or we start to see those trends, that allows us to identify that and respond rather quickly. That's a great transition into risk mitigation. So a project this size, obviously we wanted to mitigate risk as much as possible, so we put quality control measures in place at the onset of the project. Some of those are weekly status meetings, which would allow us to stay on top of issues, budget. resources, those types of things. And then we also had a monthly stakeholder meeting, or we have a monthly stakeholder meeting. This is actually contractually mandated with our installers and also by our distributor and our manufacturer. And those things, we discuss issues, look at inventory, infrastructure, things such as warranty, schedule, budget. And then we've done extensive testing, system functionality testing, the weekly performance testing. We put policies and procedures at place before we did any deployment. That was part of our planning. We probably planned for a year and a half, maybe 2 years, but we didn't want stringent enough policies or procedures that we couldn't respond to anything. So we've been able to kind of look and monitor those things, and as we get feedback from the community, as we discover issues, we've been able to modify our procedures to make sure it's a better experience for the next person. Early on, we've worked with our plumbing inspector, and they've done some inspection of work early on, did some shadowing with our installers to make sure that the quality of work was up to par. And then we've done routine monitoring of key performance indicators. A couple examples, inventory is a great example. We wanted to make sure that when we have appointments, we don't always know who's scheduling and what size meter they may have. So making sure that we're getting that information and planning for that. We have a lot of eyes, a lot of checks on this, a lot of checks and balances in place to make sure that we're not having to reschedule people, that we have what they need when they need it. And then the other piece really is having a record of the change out to monitor the quality, but also to help us in discussions where there may be discrepancies. So in this example, there's a series of photos, and we're doing this for every installation that we do. You can see the property where this was changed out. You can see in the second from the left is a picture of the old meter with the meter number and the dial. And then the third from the left is the condition that the installer left when they finished the installation, and then the final picture on the right there is a close-up of the actual new meter. So benefits.
You had some challenges according to your background when I'm just looking at this picture now with some of the meters when the homeowner had did some repairs. They put a wall in the front of the meter, so it was hard to find.
I will address that, Madam Mayor, as we get to some of the challenges, but having obstructions has been one of the challenges for this project, and people are required to have their meter be accessible, and that has been one of the challenges. So in terms of benefits, we've already talked about guaranteed read accuracy for 20 years and why that's important. Elimination of that drive-by meter reading system. So the consultant that actually drives through the community, that costs us about $10,500 a year to perform those services. So over the life of the system, that would result in a $200,000 savings. Having the enhanced tools and alarms, and then improved customer service. The one thing I'd like to note about that, I think one of the biggest benefits that we've really found so far is having access to the daily information, being able to see what that looks like, and I can show you an example in just a moment. But having that daily information has been really great for conversations. And even being able to see the time of day. So for example, you call in, it's July, and you're looking at your July bill, and you don't think you could have used this much water. With our old system, we would only get kind of aggregated data. We get it once a month. You wouldn't really be able to see the details. Under this new system, we can see time of day, so we could go back and our customer service people can look at that particular account and say, it looks like every other day at 2 a.m. you're using X amount of water, and that's pretty indicative in July that you're probably doing some lawn sprinkling, especially every other day. So that information has been really, having access to that information actually has been a very useful tool for our folks in utility billing. A recent example of alarm notification is the slide that I have on the screen right now. In this particular case, the AMI system alerted our water utility staff that a water meter in Red Oak Park registered an alarm, and as you can see in this chart, it's registering 200 gallons per hour continuously for a number of days. So you can see November 16th, 17th, 18th.
Our property.
Mhm.
One of the first examples.
This is one of the first examples. So we were able to dispatch our park staff to kind of check it out, see what they found. And what they found upon investigation was that there was a stuck fixture in one of the restrooms. Now, being that we're in the off-season, this could have gone on for a number of days, weeks, months before anybody would have noticed. And then under the old AMR system, since we're only getting that data once a month, you can see where it could have been a situation where a lot of water needlessly was going through the system. So
On time.
we were
Real time.
we were able to fix this pretty quickly, real time. So a project of this scope and magnitude doesn't come without its challenges either. We talked just a moment ago about one of those, but some of these are, and I would say, gaining access to the private property is perhaps the most significant challenge of this entire project. And then having the right tools available to mitigate the risk. I think council has done a great job in giving us additional tools to remedy. For example, we've had this robust communication plan that I went through earlier. Those things have been really great in getting the word out and helping people know what to expect. But there's going to be a certain number of people that still don't know. They're just learning about this. Maybe they just don't want to do this. And so the council has given us some tools to remedy those particular situations through either disconnection of water service or manual reading fees. And I do want to mention here that it's not our desire to disconnect anybody's water. It's labor intensive for staff. Nobody really wins. It's not an outcome that we want. So we really try to work very hard with the property owners. And I'd say it's a minimum of 7 attempts. And I know once things get handed over to our utility department for the disconnect, there are multiple more attempts that are happening to make sure that we don't have to do this. So we do 7 attempts, and that's been part of our plan. In other communities that are going through this at the same time, what we're hearing, more of a rule of thumb, is 1, maybe 2. And then they're going to the disconnect or some sort of fee. So I'm really proud to say that we're doing what we can to make sure that we don't have to use any of those other tools to remedy that. For a project of this size, the industry rate for noncompliance is 5%. We're sitting at less than 1%. So of the just over 11,000 meters we have in our system now, we've had 6 disconnects. 4 of those have been vacant properties with nobody in them. So that's a really great compliance rate.
And which is a good thing too, because they're vacant properties, so they don't need to until the property is again occupied.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. And so once there's a process in place, that once those
Reconnected.
Mm-hmm, that's correct. The age of the plumbing is also has been a challenge. There have been situations where the shutoff valves don't work properly; they're not functioning. That is the property owner's responsibility. They're to maintain and repair those for their own protection. And oftentimes that repair does require a licensed plumber, and it can be rather spendy. And that does need to be fixed before the installation can be complete. So I would say that's probably one of the biggest complaints that we get. People are frustrated. They don't want to hear from the city that they have an issue and they need a plumber. But state code does require that the valves be operable. And for the most part, people, they've really recognized the need and been able to make the repair and reschedule the installation. So people have been great. They're not happy. The city is the bearer of bad news, but they're, for the most part, doing what they need to do. In other situations, just like we talked about, they have the physical obstructions, so maybe a water softener is in the way, or they've done some remodeling and the meter got boxed in, walled in. So in those cases, the homeowner's going to have to make the necessary changes before the installation can be complete. But I will say that our installers, they're a great team. They really are. They've been great to work with. We've gotten positive feedback from those in the community, and they really do what they can to get that installation done. They don't want to come back to your home any more than you want them to come back to your home. They're there. They want to get it done. So they really try everything that they can do without risking injury or property damage to get that done. Snowbirds is another challenge, and right now a particular challenge that we're monitoring very closely. Because of our project timeline and the way that we're moving through the city to perform those installations, we know we're going to run into situations where it's going to be difficult to gain access to some of those properties where where folks might be wintering in a warmer climate. So some of the property owners have made advance arrangements for that. They may have a friend or a neighbor or a family member do those installations. But I do want to say that wintering south doesn't exempt you from needing to do this within the city's timeline. So we, this project, the substantial completion is going to be in April. So just on the tail end is when people are returning from their warm winter away, and so this is something that we're going to be monitoring very closely and looking to see if we need to respond or change in terms of procedures to get those done. And then finally, I think I mentioned this earlier, but the AMI system and the AMR system aren't compatible. The new meters aren't able to be read by the old system. And so right now, because we have new and old meters in, we are operating concurrently the new and the old systems, so the AMR and the AMI, but that's not a good long-term solution. It's not operationally efficient, nor is it financially sustainable. Then looking ahead, substantial completion of in April with project wrap-up activities extending into early August. And then the next step for staff is really to focus on the system and the analytics and the sensitivity of all those thresholds and alarms, so we know that when we're responding, that we're responding to something that's the real deal. And then the final thing to note is staff intend to make a recommendation to include funding in the 2019 budget for a self-service portal. It's really the next step. The AMI system, which is the new system, has great detail and information, and staff are really the only ones benefiting from that right now. There just really isn't an efficient way to share that information with the public unless they come in and we review, and we have done that where they've sat and looked at their data, but it's not terribly efficient for them. So putting that in their fingertips through a self-service portal would be kind of the next phase or the next step that staff would recommend. The public could see when they're using their water the most. They would receive alerts for potential leaks. They would be able to see if there's an unusual pattern. There'd be alerts for that. You would be able to see videos or have tips or tricks on how to diagnose or diagnose a leak or fix an issue. And then really there's also a big water conservation component to those public portals. So exciting things for the future, but with that, I don't have anything further, so I'm certainly be happy to answer any questions.
Actually, it's a very comprehensive update on how things have progressed, and I want to thank Steve. Okay, so well, for all of this,
Yeah, Madam Mayor, if I might, this is such a great example of cross-departmental partnership.
Yes.
Dana, Ms. Hardy is the lead with utility billing as well as communications underneath her, and she has been working with Steve's staff as well as the inspection staff and really has done a great job. Also creating a strong partnership with the private sector. We've had a great contractor in this case, and it's just a wonderful example of what strong project leadership can do as well as a collaborative relationship with other departments.
My comments have to do with both of you. So this is a real example, having a resident, having an installation that didn't go well and didn't have water, and it was a Saturday. And I have to thank you all, because then it came to me, I emailed you Steve got someone, the person who was doing the installation, go over there, turn on, and they had water. The other is you and I working on the one gentleman who has a rental property. So I have to thank staff. One, Steve, on the issue with, on a Saturday with one of our residents. She's very happy, and of course you saw that. And then Dana with the one gentleman who has a rental property, and just that miscommunication, but you did a nice job of working with him. And so, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And just to note for the council, with regard to situations where we have tenants, we have modified the language in our letters that have gone out to soften the language and to add some clarification for those types of situations. So,
yeah, Steve.
And if I can take 2 quick seconds, Madam Mayor, I think what you just saw is the reason this is how Dana shines for the city. She's as good a project manager for a project this large. You have to be so organized. And when we're dealing with 16,000 customers, we are going to have issues. We're going to have things that don't work out perfectly. And Dana, as the lead, along with Linda Mullen assisting from our group, they've done such a fabulous job on delivering this. So they deserve the credit for making this happen. And it is every day there's a mountain of responses and things that need to be done, and Dana spearheads that. So I think you can see with how well she's set this program up that it's really a model for how you want to implement a project like this. So.
Well, thank you, because I see that, and in reading the background, but also in the emails that I receive and then send it out to all of you to answer. And you've done a wonderful job. So Dana, on your end, and Steve, on your end as well, thank you. And also Linda Mullen, her response also in really working with some of those challenges. So
we have a great project team.
yeah, so great. Thank you very much. Okay?
Thank you.
Good job.
Yeah,
Really good.
thank you. Okay, now we move on to roundtable. There are no roundtables, so reports. Bill?
None.
Dan?
Nothing met this month.
Kara?
No.
Councilmember Keeley?
MVTA met some year-end stuff, budgeting for next year. MVTA has a $30 million revenue budget with $31 million in expenses. They're going to use fund balance to cover the rest. In 2018, use of fund balance is being dictated by fund balances by all the opt-outs. Invest is showing $4 million. It's not guaranteed yet, but we'll see how that comes out. That's kind of a big if within their budget. Staff wages were increased 3%, and they took a look at benefits, and they polled all their member cities. Burnsville was at the lower end, the more conservative number, and their benefits increased 6.8. I can give you an idea how high some of the other cities were. And Mr. Luther, our executive director, is due for, a little overdue for an annual review. And it's going to be completed by early January and administered in January. And that'll actually be about a 16-month review or something like that. We had a good retreat at Best Western for a morning, and a lot of good stuff came out of it. We did an exercise with using some software technology, answering questions, and you can see it up on the screen. And it did basically a word puzzle using the answers, and then we did breakouts and for 4 different major areas, and did some, just jotted down on a Post-it note and post ideas, clustered them, and a lot of great stuff came out of it. It was probably one of the better retreats for this type of an organization that I've attended and participated in, so it was very well organized. And I threw out app that I was marketing and technology oriented for my input, and I threw out, and a lot of others chimed in. I wasn't the only voice, but that MBTA needed to push ahead and lead and develop an app. And my suggestion was, thinking out of the box, is to partner. The real challenge with bus ridership is the first mile and the last mile. Where do I go to get a bus based on where I live? And when I get off at the other end, how far do I have to go to get to my destination off the closest bus stop? And with that in mind, I suggested that MBTA have discussions with Uber and Lyft and cab companies and develop an app that's integrated with those. So as a user, all I want to do is have the same convenience that Uber and Lyft have provided, and that is pull up the app, put in your start and your end, and it would tie into Uber's network for getting me to the first mile to get to the bus stop, and then the last mile to get to my destination. And that type of technology could overcome one of the biggest barriers of bus ridership from those who have an option with a car but would really like to ride the bus, but
On a reverse
Where do
commute
you go?
also, on a reverse
Yes.
commute.
So anyway, it was just a great exercise and a good time, and I think we have some good stuff coming in 2018. And as we talked about in our legislative priorities, the Met Council does control our funding, and that is an ongoing challenge.
But I see that we still have the ability to apply for CMAQ.
Yes. Yep, things are changing in transportation a little bit, but there's a few things that need to get fixed permanently, and hopefully the next legislative session, some work will get done on that. But overall, good, well-run organization. As noted in some previous discussions, I brought up some current concerns about staff expansion, and some others chimed in at this recent retreat. And so I think the board is doing its due diligence in helping guide Luther and giving him advice. So that's it.
Okay.
I-35 meets this Thursday, and fire muster hasn't met for a while, but that'll start cranking up again.
35 doesn't meet till January.
I-35 is not this Thursday? Oh, I guess I could change I didn't pull it off my calendar. We can go back to Thursday morning one-on-one.
Aren't you glad you didn't drive to Richfield?
Yeah, I thought I pulled it off my calendar, but it was up on my phone and it overlapped my one-on-one with Heather, so we moved the one-on-one, but can move it back now.
Convention and Visitors Bureau, everything is going well with regard to the financials. There's been a decrease in revenue, but that has to do with the Ryder Cup from last year in comparison to this year. So that has to do with how many people stayed in our hotels. But the Ryder Cup last year drove for those 2 months. And then we approved the employee benefit process and completed the account transfers from U.S. Bank to Firefly and stayed local on all of that. And then the analytics report, that continues to do very well. And then the new partnership is with Northern Sun Intercollegiate Conference, and this is working with a group that's located here in Burnsville, but they're the Northern Sun Intercollegiate Conference. So what we want to do is to make sure that when they are playing in our region, inside the metropolitan region, that they know that Burnsville has product also to stay here, and then restaurants and retail. So we want them to understand what we have in terms of a destination. So that's on the Burnsville Convention and Visitors Bureau, and in the monitoring report, you will see the minutes. The other is that Heather and I attended our Municipal Legislative Commission, and we only meet quarterly, and we met at in Minnetonka, and they're doing an expansion also for their police and their fire, and they're doing that as well, and putting in a garage for police. Budget is strong. Revenues and our reserves are strong. We did lose one city, and they made the decision to opt out. and that's the city of Maplewood. And the reason for that is because they are a gainer and not a contributor to fiscal disparities. So our principles and what we stand for doesn't meet with theirs. So they think that they needed to opt out of MLC. That's correct, right, Heather? That was the reason why they
Yes.
decided to? Okay. And then we adopted the legislative agenda. And then Heather is working on a group that's going to be looking at fiscal disparities with Tischler Bice.
Correct.
And this is a new group that we're working with in terms of really understanding all of that, just like we did the VOS database that gave us some very good information. This one's going to give us a little bit more. Heather, do you want to, because when we had our meeting, you had just gotten the contract with Tischler Bice, right?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, members of council, it's really looking at if there are some tweaks we can make to the fiscal disparities formula that would be beneficial to MLC member communities. So,
Yeah, we're trying all kinds of things. But I think it's been around since the 70s. Yes, Heather?
I'm assuming, did you want to mention the legislative breakfast?
Breakfast that's coming
February
up. And I
7th?
think, yes, Michelle sent that out to everybody when the breakfast is going to be. It's in January.
It's February.
February 7th, I think it's
Oh,
when it on our
February,
calendars for
yeah.
7:30 a.m. at the Egan Community Center.
Okay. And I think that's it. Is there anything that I missed of that?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Is there anything else? Heather, from staff's perspective,
No,
Dana?
ma'am.
Michelle?
Thanks to the chief for sticking with us tonight.
Thank you. Yes.
We're in good hands.
Chief, thank you. Okay, and with that, we stand adjourned by acclamation. Thank you.